Before the dawn, a breath of sulfur and lavender, there is a particular silence in Pompeii before dawn. Not the silence of death. No, that will come later, but the kind that hums low in the chest, as if the earth is holding its breath. A pause between heartbeats. The kind that speaks not in words, but in a language older than speech. One of smells and shadows, and the throb of heat rising from the baked stones of the earth. And it is in this quiet that I rise, as I always do, just before the sun slips over the edge of the Vesuvius. I am Livia Calvina, daughter of Aelia the herb wife and Marcus the freeman, midwife to the women of Regio 6, and I have spent my life listening to such silences. Some say a woman must be loud to bring new life into this world, must cry out with each birth, must shout down the spirits that haunt a bleeding bed. But I have found that it is in the quiet where truth lives. It is in the hush of the womb, the breath before a newborn wails, that the veil between this world and the next is thin as muslin. And so I wake quietly, with my back aching and my knees stiff from years spent kneeling beside birth mats. I do not strike a flame yet. The light would feel harsh, too fast. I sit at the edge of my cot and listen. The city stirs, gently. The pigeons in the courtyard flutter their wings. A mule brays somewhere near the stables. Water trickles in the impluvium basin. The scent of olive oil from last night's lamp lingers on my hands, and beneath it all, faint, so faint I could pretend it isn't there, is the whisper of sulfur. It is not new. We have all smelled it before, rising from the mountain after a summer rain. We say the gods are angry when it comes, or that Vulcan is stirring in his forge beneath the rock. Old tales, old warnings. No one listens anymore. I move slowly through the atrium, my feet tracing familiar stone. The mosaic of Venus, rising from the sea, catches a glint of pre-dawn light from the courtyard's open roof. Her eyes forever cast downward, modest yet divine. I light the oil lamp with a practiced hand. One flick, a breath, the flame dances. Its glow flickers against the frescoed walls. Reds and golds, scenes of Bacchus feasting, of women in long tunicas holding laurel branches, of myths I grew up hearing whispered beside my mother's herb jars. My mother, Aelia. She has been gone for many years now, but her voice is still folded into the crevices of this house. I hear her when I grind lavender and pennyroyal together. I see her hands in my own when I twist cord for swaddling. She was a healer, a sharp-eyed woman with laughter like birdsong and a tongue that could cut like a Roman blade. I learned the trade at her knee, midwifery, salves, tinctures, and prayers. We do not speak of it often, but all midwives carry the names of the dead in their hearts. Every life brought into the world is matched by one that slips out too soon. And yet we go on, because someone must catch the child as it emerges, red and gasping from the edge of darkness. The morning ritual I dress in layers, a linen stola belted with a cord, and over it, my old green palla. The hem is frayed, worn from years of service, but I like it that way. A woman's garment should know her story. I pass through the kitchen, where Sabina, my young apprentice, sleeps still on her mat. She is only 14, barely older than some of the mothers I've assisted. Her face is turned toward the open air, lips parted, one hand clutching the pouch of dried fennel I gave her last night for her cramps. She will make a fine midwife. One day, if the gods allow it, I step outside into the garden. The air is thick with the perfume of fig and oleander. Myrtle vines crawl along the garden wall, and a few pale blossoms open, touched by dew. Above me, the sky is a bruised plum, and the last stars blink slowly out. The mountain looms to the north, a black shadow beyond the city, too massive to question, too distant to fear. It has always been there. It has always been. A nightjar calls, its trilling voice rising like smoke, and I smile faintly. The augurs say birds are messengers of the gods. I do not know which god speaks through this one, but I listen anyway. Then I gather my satchel, linen bandages, swaddles, olive oil, beeswax salve, a tiny figurine of Ilethia, the goddess of childbirth, and begin the walk. Pompeii wakes. The street outside my domus is already warm beneath my sandals. The paving stones hold yesterday's heat like memory. Vendors are setting up their carts, figs, bread, garum in clay jugs. A man scrapes the soot from a public oven with a long-handled rake. A slave boy rushes past carrying amphorae of wine, his sandals slapping wetly against stone. There is a murmur in the city this morning, not quite unrest, but something near it, a pressure. The air feels heavier. Some look toward the mountain, others look away. I pass by the temple of Isis, where incense already curls into the morning sky. A priestess in white chants softly behind a screen, her voice carrying the old words. She dips her fingers into sacred water and traces the forehead of a kneeling woman. A blessing for fertility, perhaps, or protection. I bow my head as I pass. The birth of Cilia's daughter. I arrive at Cilia's house as the sun crests the edge of the sky. Her husband, a baker, meets me at the door with eyes wide and worried. She's in pain, he says, wringing his hands. Of course she is. Childbirth is pain, but also something else, something holy. Inside, the air is thick with sage smoke and steam. Cilia lies on a low pallet, her hair matted to her temples, her fingers white as she grips the edge of the cloth. I kneel beside her, placing a hand on her brow. "You are strong," I whisper, "like Juno's lions." Her eyes flutter. She nods. Hours pass in ripples. The midwife's time is not like other time. It bends, stretches, contracts with the rhythm of a mother's breath. Sabina arrives, sleepy-eyed and alert. I guide her to press warm cloths to Cilia's belly, to grind the bark of willow into water for her to sip. And when the child comes, slick and wailing, the first sound it makes is not a scream, but a long breath, as if tasting the world. "A daughter," I whisper. "A beautiful daughter." Cilia cries, clutching the child to her breast, and I feel the old ache in my chest, the memory of my own child, lost before breath, long ago. Evening shadows. By the time I return home, the city hums with heat. The streets are busier now. Children chasing one another with wax dolls, merchants arguing over coin, the clang of a blacksmith's forge echoing down the alleyways. But the sky has changed. Clouds, strange ones, gather near the mountain. They are tall and dark, like columns of wool, rising not across the sky but upward into it. I pause, staring. Others do too. For a moment, the street stills. Then someone laughs, nervously, and the world continues. Because what else can it do? At home. I wash my hands in rose water, the scent clinging to my skin. I light the evening lamp and sit beside the garden wall. The birds are silent now. The air smells of sulfur again, but stronger. Still, I say nothing. I write in my journal. A habit I took from my mother. I write of Cilia's daughter, of the way the clouds looked, of a feeling unspoken like a thread pulled too tight. And as night falls over Pompeii, I lie on my cot and listen to the silence once more. It is louder now. It pulses, it waits, and so the midwife sleeps, in a house of jasmine and smoke. Beneath, a sky that does not yet know what it holds. She dreams of olive groves and lullabies, of whispered prayers and sea foam, of a mountain that breathes in silence. The ash has not yet fallen, but it listens, and it waits. Heat in the stones. The noon hour beckons. The sun is nearly at its peak when I wake again. Sleep clung to me like cobwebs this morning, thick, strange, and restless. My dreams had been filled with molten rivers and the keening of unseen birds. I had dreamt of black rain, though the sky above the garden is blue and burning. I rise slowly, bones creaking like shutters. Sabina is in the kitchen already, grinding cumin and coriander in the mortar, the rhythmic tap echoing through the walls. "You rose early," I say softly, stepping into the shade. She looks up, tucks a strand of hair behind her ear, and offers me a tired smile. The doves wouldn't stop. And indeed, the birds have been restless. They circle the courtyard in strange patterns, darting sharply toward shadows. The air carries a tang today. Not only the usual dust of late summer or the brine off the bay, but something heavier, metallic, like the scent of blood on a coin. I pour a cup of cool barley water and sit at the low table. The walls flicker with reflected light from the impluvium. I run a hand along the worn wood grain and think of all the mornings I've sat here. So many they blend together like threads in a tapestry, but this one feels different, not because of omens, not because of smoke or cloud, but because of how alive everything feels. As if the world is making a final show of beauty. Even in discomfort, Pompeii is lovely, the market at noon Sabina, and I set out for the forum just as the sun claims its throne above the city. The streets are alive, blistered with heat, rippling with sound. Sandals clap against cobblestones. A donkey brays under its load of figs and olives. Perfume from a spice seller's stall wafts in waves. Cinnamon, myrrh, crushed petals. Vendors call out in Greek, Latin, Oscan, a mingling of tongues like the currents of the sea. A girl sings near the temple of Apollo, her voice high and soft as a reed flute. The marble columns sweat under the sun, their fluted bodies casting long, thin shadows across the square. The statues of gods seem to blink in the heat, their faces made soft by shimmer and mirage. "Do you feel it?" Sabina asks, clutching her basket close. I nod. It's too quiet for how loud it is. She frowns, and I don't explain. She is young. She hasn't yet learned that silence isn't always the absence of sound. Sometimes it's the weight that sound carries when the world is holding something back. A pause at the bathhouse by midday. The air grows so thick that we take refuge in the women's baths. Inside, the world changes. Voices lower. Light becomes filtered through stone and steam. The sound of water trickling into marble pools is a balm. I sit on the lip of the tepidarium and soak my aching feet, watching a pair of older matrons gossip quietly nearby. They speak of their husbands, of a feast planned for the next night, of their concerns about the fish, not as fresh as last market, one whispers. Sabina floats for a time in the caldarium, her hair fanning out like seaweed, her limbs still, too coltish for grace but full of youth's promise, and I sit and listen to the breathing of the baths, to the lapping water, to the memory of my mother's voice, warning me never to fall asleep in steam. The spirits of the dead cling to heat, she used to say. I nearly doze anyway, but then I hear something. A sound not belonging in the quiet hum of the baths. Rumble low, distant like thunder pulled from behind stone, so faint I wonder if it was real. I sit up, heart still, eyes narrowing. No one else reacts. The gossiping women keep chatting. Sabina hums softly in the caldarium, and still the sound lingers, like a memory of noise. The astrologer's warning back in the marketplace, the sun seems even more oppressive than before. The clouds, those strange upright clouds, gather more visibly now, like white stalks, like spears of wool rising unnaturally from the edge of the world. On a whim, I turn off the main road and lead Sabina toward the eastern edge of the city, where an old astrologer named Cassianus lives in a modest villa overgrown with ivy. He is nearly blind now, and mostly mad, but his charts are ancient, and I've trusted his words more than once. We find him seated in the garden beneath a pergola of withering grapes, his face tilted toward the sun. Cassianus, I say softly, bowing my head. Ah, Livia, he murmurs. The mountain's shadow follows you today. I pause. You feel it too? He nods once. The gods are no longer quiet. He reaches for a scroll, unrolls it with trembling hands. Mars is angry. Venus is veiled. Mercury gone from the sky. The sky bleeds secrets, but no one listens. I glance at Sabina, who shifts uncomfortably beside me. You always speak in riddles, I say gently. Cassiana smiles, revealing a missing tooth. Then let me speak plainly, he points. Toward Vesuvius, where the clouds rise like a wound. By this time tomorrow you will wish you had already died. An afternoon call. The words linger with me as we walk away, though I don't share them with Sabina. The rest of the afternoon is a blur of familiar calls. We visit Junior, a woman in her 7th month, whose ankles are swollen and whose nerves rattle. Like beans in a jar, I massage her feet, give her chamomile, whisper to the child in her womb, then to Brutus the butcher's wife, who lost a child last spring and fears her belly is cursed. I hold her hand, tell her the gods do not curse the innocent, wrap a charm of laurel and blue glass around her wrist. The ordinary rhythm of the day. Life, even as the sky darkens at its edges. Evening shadows stretch as the sun begins its descent. A strange hush falls over Pompeii again, one that even the heat cannot explain. The birds have stopped flying. The dogs, once barking at shadows, now cower near doorways, whining low in their throats. A cart overturned near the amphitheatre, and no one moved to right it. People glance. At the mountain more often now. They do not speak of it, but they look. And me, I boil rue and lavender in a shallow bowl. I press my palms against the earth, searching for tremors. I light a tiny offering at my mother's household shrine, and I wait. A letter never sent. That night, I write a letter to my sister in Neapolis. I do not know why. I have not written to her in over a year since our argument about the dowry she felt cheated from. But tonight I write as if words alone can hold the world together. Dearest Valeria, if you smell ash on the wind, know it is not from a hearth. If you dream of fire, wake gently. I do not know what comes, but I feel the earth whisper it. Forgive me for everything left unsaid. I remember the shell you gave me when we were girls. I still keep it in my satchel. I hope the sea carries this letter, even if I do not follow. Love always, Livia. I fold the parchment. I do not send it. Nightfall in the city of ash, the sky turns crimson, then violet, then the color of old bruises. The moon rises half full, pale and watchful. Sabina falls asleep beside the hearth, murmuring soft prayers in her sleep. I sit by the window, eyes fixed on the mountain, and for the first time, I see it. The glow. A red pulse at the summit, tiny, flickering, like a god's breath. My own breath catches. Not fear, not yet, but something older, something primal. I whisper an old Oscan lullaby, the one my mother sang to me, the one I sing to newborns when they cannot sleep. The stars seem farther away tonight, and the ground beneath my feet is too still. And so the midwife waits, as the city hums with heat and silence, as water stills and birds hide, as the mountain dreams with eyes open. Pompeii breathes, one last time. But the ash is closer now, waiting just beyond the veil. Ash on the wind, the first stones. Fall, there's a moment, just before true night falls, when the world balances delicately between breath and stillness. It is the hour when oil lamps are lit, when the last of the market cries vanish into alleyways, when footsteps quicken and shutters close. It is during that hour that the first stones fall, but not loudly, not yet. It begins like a whisper, like the sigh of a tired god. The lanterns glow. I light the household lamp as twilight deepens into something more uncertain. Its orange flicker dances across the walls. illuminating shelves of herbs, clay figurines, dried garlic, and the amphorae that store my tinctures. Sabina is curled near the hearth, her sleep uneasy. Her brow twitches, her hands clutch at her tunic. She dreams something dark, I sense, but I do not wake her. Dreams in our house are omens. I open the small shutter beside my work table. Outside, the sky has deepened to a strange purplish. Whew! I can no longer see the moon. That's when I hear it, a soft patter, like dry beans poured onto a clay roof. Stones from the sky at first. I think it is the doves again. Or perhaps a passing wind stirring the olive tree. But then the pattering grows louder, uneven, rhythmic but unnatural. I step out into the garden. Small white stones are falling from the heavens. Pumice, dust, ash. Tiny at first, barely larger than pebbles. They bounce off the tiled roof and scatter into the basil plants below. I reach out and catch one in my palm. It is warm, like something born of fire but not fully aflame. The ash in the air thickens slowly, coating the leaves in a fine grey veil. The air tastes strange, bitter, sulphuric, sharp at the back of the throat. The cicadas have stopped. Even the fountain is silent, as though the water itself has chosen not to speak. Voices in the street. I hear my neighbour, old Marcus, calling out from his doorway. "Is it rain?" He shouts to no one. "Is it dust from the north?" Another voice answers closer. "It's from the mountain. Look to the peak." I glance upward, past the rooftops, and see it, unmistakable. Now, a column of smoke, enormous and unnatural, rising in a vast pillar straight into the sky. Its base glows faintly red, like a forge deep underground. The top spreads out like a pine tree, wide and flat, pushing against the heavens. It is beautiful, in the way that the final heartbeat of a dying animal is beautiful, poignant, tragic, soaked in the dignity of ending. I take a slow breath. The ash in the air clings to the back of my throat. It is beginning. Inside the villa, I return indoors, closing the shutters, bolting them not out of fear but instinct. I drape wet cloths over the gaps in the door. The old Oscan stories warned of ash spirits, souls who drift on the wind and enter through cracks, but I know this isn't spirit magic. This is the mountain. Still, my hands move as if guided by my ancestors. I check the satchels near the door. My healing bag, the birthing stones, a jar of dried mulberry bark. I gather what I can into a leather pack, just enough for a single journey. Not escape, not yet, just preparation. Because a midwife, above all, must always be ready for the unexpected moment, a visit in darkness. There's a frantic knock at the door just after moonrise. I open it to find Dacius, the baker's son, his face smeared with ash, his eyes wide and bright with fear. "My mother!" he gasps. "She started her pains." In all the strangeness of the day, I had forgotten she was due soon. "Now?" I ask. He nods, breathing hard. "Too soon. She's early. It's bad." I glance at Sabina, who is now awake and watching from the edge of the room. "Stay here," I tell her. "Bolt the door once I'm gone. If you smell sulfur, soak cloth and cover your nose." She nods, too afraid to ask questions. I follow Dacius into the blackened streets of Pompeii. The labouring woman. The city has changed. Where once light flickered in windows, now most are dark. The ash falls steadily, silently, like snow, except warmer, heavier. It clings to tunics, to hair, to skin. We pass the Temple of Jupiter, its steps barely visible beneath the grey dust. We arrive at the bakery to find Livia, the baker's wife, lying on a pallet near the oven. She is soaked in sweat. Her breathing is ragged. Her eyes dart between me and the ceiling, as though expecting it to collapse. "The pain won't stop," she whispers. It's not like before. I kneel beside her, hands already moving, calming, soothing. Outside, the ash falls. Inside, life fights to emerge, the birth amidst falling ash. The labor is long, longer than I expected. The ash thickens outside, and I can hear the soft creak of the roof under its weight. The oven glows faintly, casting flickering shadows across the walls. I work in silence, murmuring low prayers to Lucina, to Bonadea, to any goddess who listens still. The baby arrives near midnight. A girl, small, angry, loud. Her cries echo off. The clay walls, sharp and bright, defiant against the stillness outside. I wrap her in linen and hand her to her mother. She is strong, I say, and brave. She came through the fire. The baker weeps as he kisses his wife's forehead. The family clings to each other as though they've emerged from shipwreck. And I sit back, wipe my hands on my robe and look toward the sky. The glow from the mountain is brighter now. There are no stars. The return, I walk back through the streets alone. Ash covers everything. Statues wear cloaks of grey. The public fountains have stopped flowing. The dogs are silent. I pass the forum. A marble column has cracked. A fig tree has fallen sideways, its roots exposed. And in the air, there is no wind, only the sound of falling stone. I reach my home. Sabina opens the door. "Before I knock, you're safe," she breathes. I nod and step inside. But safety feels like a forgotten word. Night's end, I sit at the hearth as the night deepens. The floor trembles once, faint like a heartbeat beneath stone. Sabina dozes with her head on my lap. I stroke her hair, sing the lullaby again, softer now. Sleep, little flame, while the sky grows dim. Let the stars keep guard, and the gods forgive sin. Outside the ash falls, the first stones have come, and the city still pretends it sleeps. But we are not sleeping, we are listening to the breath of the mountain, to the story it's preparing to tell. And so, under the veil of night, the city begins to change. Unseen cracks form, roofs begin to strain. But inside one quiet villa, a midwife watches. She holds no power against the mountain, only against silence, and she will not go quietly. Not yet. Whispers beneath the earth, before the wall gives way. The world is grey, not the gentle grey of fog drifting through hills, or of sea mist rising before sunrise, but the colour of death in disguise. Ash thickens on every rooftop. Streets lie, muffled. The air holds its breath as though it too waits for what comes next. In this silence the city dreams, but the dreams are uneasy. Beneath the stones the earth begins to whisper. The pulse, beneath the floor, I wake before light returns. Sabina is curled beside me, her sleep light and watchful. Her breath is slow, shallow, like a sparrow hiding from hawks. A new sound has joined the falling ash, a low, rhythmic rumble, not constant, not yet, but deep. I place my palm on the stone floor, and I feel it. The earth is breathing, not with peace, but with effort, like something immense, trying to push its way from beneath centuries of stillness. There is pressure, a thrum, a warning, rituals for a failing. Sky-eye rise quietly and light the house's small altar lamp. There, beside the carved figure of Minerva, I place an offering, a pinch of fennel seed, a smear of honey on terracotta, a whisper of oil across her stone brow. Protect this home, I murmur. Protect this girl. Not for myself, not even for the house, for Sabina. Her sleep is light but dreamless now. A grace, perhaps. I draw a line of ash above the doorway with my finger. The old ways, half memory, half protection. Oscan prayers tangled with Roman rites. A hybrid faith, like most of us in Pompeii. We are a city of blends, and now a city of silence. A walk before light. The urge comes softly, to step into the streets before the first rays of dawn. I gather my shawl, dampen a linen cloth, and wrap it around my nose and mouth. Sabina stirs. "Where are you going?" she asks sleepily. "To listen," I whisper. Pompeii, sleeps uneasily. The city looks ancient now, older than Rome, older than any time I remember. Ash lies thick, ankle-deep in places. The columns of the Forum are ghostly white, and the lairs statues. At crossroads are barely visible. I see no one, only footprints already beginning to fade in the drifting dust, and beneath it all, the quiet groan of the earth, a pressure. It presses into the soles of my feet, into my ribs, into memory. The fisherman's cart near the edge of the market, I see it, a broken cart, half covered by fallen ash. Its wheel is splintered. One of its baskets overturned, spilling dried octopus and salted sprats into the grey. There is blood on the wheel rim, not fresh, but red enough to speak. Someone was here. Someone hurt, or worse. I whisper a prayer for them, not loud, just a breath. Shakust, gods are busy, I think, or perhaps already gone. The library courtyard. I walk to the home of Lucia, a learned widow who keeps scrolls in her atrium. Her courtyard is open to the sky, and ash now lies over every scroll on the reading benches. Lucia is there, brushing the ash from a pile of papyri with obsessive care. Her face is calm, almost serene. Lucia, I say gently. She looks up. Her eyes are red-rimmed but dry. I'm saving what I can, she murmurs. These are stories older than Augustus. They shouldn't be buried again. She offers me a scroll wrapped in cloth. For Sabina, she says, so she will remember words if memory fades. I press her hand and leave her to her quiet salvation. The breadline, further on, near the bakery district, a few souls gather, faces hidden by cloth, eyes wide with confusion. A soldier from the local cohort tries to direct people north, toward Herculaneum. His voice is hoarse. "Only temporary," he cries. "We'll return when it's clear." But no one moves. Some weep. Others carry baskets and loaves, hoping for barter. One man coughs blood into his hand, then stares at it in disbelief. I leave before fear can root itself in my own spine. Back home. By the time I return, the sky is shifting again. A strange reddish hue creeps into the ash-thick light. There is no sunrise, only a slow, bleeding glow that filters through the dust like fire through gauze. Sabina meets me at the door. Her eyes widen when she sees my grey-covered robes. "It's getting worse," she says softly. "Yes," I reply, "but I do not say the rest. It will get worse still." The wall gives way. It happens just before mid-morning. A long, low crack sounds from the east wall of our neighbour's villa. Then suddenly, a section of plaster collapses inward, spilling bricks and dust into the street, Sabina screams. I pull her close. From inside the neighbour's house, a woman calls for help. We rush over, barefoot in ash, stepping over fallen tiles. Inside, it is chaos. A child is trapped beneath a roof beam. Her leg is twisted, but she is alive. We lift the beam, together with two strangers. I do not know their names, only their hands. The child is saved, but her mother stands silently, staring at the cracked ceiling. "Is this the end?" she whispers. I have no answer, only a hand on her shoulder, only breath. A meal in stillness back home. I cook. Simple things, lentils, dried peach, flatbread from the baker's wife. It is an act of defiance. A ritual of grounding. The scent of garlic cuts through the sulfur. For a moment it is almost normal. We eat in silence, Sabina and I. Outside, more cracks echo across rooftops. The ash now reaches the top of our garden wall. I mark the level with a chalk line. We will watch it rise. We will measure what the mountain steals. A lullaby for the earth that night, I sing again. Not just to Sabina, but to the house, to the walls, to the roots beneath the foundation. Sleep, O stone, and keep us warm. Let the mountain sigh, but do no harm. Sabina hums with me, her voice thin but steady. The house groans once more, but it holds. For now, the whisper. Beneath, I sleep lightly that night. My dreams full of voices I cannot name. Faces appear. old patients, lost children, women whose births I guided and who did not live to see morning. They whisper, "Not yet. There is still time. The gods have not finished their story." I wake before dawn again. The ash has reached the doorway, but the door still opens, and so the earth speaks, not in thunder, but in sighs. Cracks form not only in stone, but in memory, yet the heart beats on. A midwife listens, a child sleeps, and above them all, the mountain waits. The veil of fire, the morning Pompeii changed forever. Some mornings are born with sun, others are born with silence. This one is born with neither. Instead, it comes swaddled in sulfur and shadow, an unwelcome child of the mountain. The air is no longer just thick, it is heavy. Breathing feels like swallowing smoke laced with sand, and the sky is no longer a sky, a morning without color. When I open the door, the world is orange, not golden, not warm, not the orange of sunset or of autumn figs, but a sickly hue, the color of flame filtered through death. Ash falls faster now, no longer drifting gently but driving like rain turned to needles. Tiny, endless strikes against the skin. Sabina stands beside me. She has not spoken in 10 minutes. We both watch the street, quiet as prayer. The first roar, it begins with a sound like the sky being torn in half. Not thunder, not even thunder's ancestor. This sound is deeper. It does not travel through air, it travels through bone. The mountain has cracked its silence. A column of fire rises in the distance. We cannot see its base, only the great plume pushing through. The clouds, glowing red and black and alive. The volcano is no longer whispering, it screams. Evacuation, rumors, neighbors run. Some carry bundles, others only children. A man knocks on our door, his tunic soaked, his face streaked with ash and tears. "They're saying it's coming this way," he gasps. "The sea's pulling back. Boats are leaving." Behind him, a dog limps down the street. Its coat is white with soot. Sabina looks at me. She says nothing, but her eyes are loud. Is it time? A choice to stay, but we cannot leave yet. Not while old Marius lies dying 3 houses down, and not while another mother, somewhere close, is in labor. They will come. They always do, when the sky turns strange, and I am still Livia, still the midwife, even if the world is ending. A visit to Marius, I take Sabina by the hand, and we walk down the ash-covered street. Our footsteps are erased behind us, swallowed instantly. Old Marius is barely conscious. His daughters weep beside him, their tears leaving streaks down soot-covered cheeks. I clean his face with warm cloths. I anoint his head with oil. I speak his name so he remembers he is still in his body. He opens one eye and says, "Is it the gods, Livia?" I do not lie. "It might be," I whisper. And then, as he exhales one final breath, I add, "But you are not alone." His passing is quiet, even. In catastrophe, death still moves like a sigh, labor in the storm, and back at the door when it comes. A knock, then a cry. It is Daciana, the potter's wife. Her water has broken. She is early. I wrap my shawl and follow her through falling ash. Her house trembles with each distant rumble, each explosion from the mountain. Inside, I deliver the child. It is not easy. The cord is wrapped. The mother bleeds. The heat is unbearable, but the child is born alive. A boy. His cry cuts through the apocalyptic silence. He sounds angry at the world that greets him. So am I. Naming in the ash, they name him Flavius. After strength, I help clean them both and swaddle the child. There is no wine to bless him, no priest to chant, but I press my palm to his chest and whisper a prayer in the old tongue, the tongue of my grandmother, of hills before empire. Let the mountain pass over you, little flame. Let no god steal your name. The weight of decision. By midday, it is clear. We must leave. The air is poison now. People stumble through the streets coughing blood. Roofs collapse under the weight of ash. It is not a question of if, only when. Sabina packs a bag. Not clothes, not coins, scrolls, herbs, 2 carved figures of the household gods. We are still Pompeian. Even now, a letter for what remains before we go. I write something on parchment. With trembling hand, a letter to anyone who may find it. This was a house of healing. Here lived Livia, a midwife, and Sabina, her daughter in heart. If you find this, know we lived with love. We sang at night. We listened to wind. We helped where we could. Let us be remembered not in fear, but in warmth. I place it beneath Minerva's feet. I whisper thanks, then I close the door. Into the vale we join the others, fleeing west. The streets are filled with ghosts. People coated in grey, eyes wide, children crying without sound. It is hard to know where. The city ends now, everything is ash and firelight. But we move forward, Sabina's hand in mine. Every step is a goodbye, to the bakery, to the olive grove, to the place where my mother once taught me to sing, to Pompeii. A memory at the city gates. We pass the Herculaneum gate. I hear laughter, real high laughter, a child chasing a paper bird on a string, despite everything. Her father calls her back, but she giggles and runs. For one fleeting moment, there is joy again. Even as the sky collapses, the veil is fire now. The air has changed. The world groans, but we are still walking. We do not know where the road leads, but we walk it together. And behind us, Pompeii sleeps beneath her veil, not yet buried, but already lost. Ash in the wind, the flight toward Herculaneum to flee is not just to leave, it is to unravel. With each step away from Pompeii, something tears inside, a thread from a memory, a shape from a home, a breath from a name. The ash sticks to everything. Now, our sandals, our eyelids, our thoughts, we are not walking through land, we are walking through memory turned to dust. The road is a river of faces. We are not alone. Hundreds move with us, men, women, children, animals. Some weep. Some shout prayers to Jupiter or Isis. Some are silent, staring at nothing, already gone inside. One boy walks with a clay flute clutched in his fist. He does not play it, but he carries it like a sword. Sabina walks beside me, a wet cloth over her nose, her eyes roar. No one speaks much. Words dissolve in the wind. A cart of survivors just past the olive groves. We find a broken cart, its wheels split. Inside, a family huddles, 2 children, a grandmother, a man with his arm in a makeshift sling. They ask for help. We cannot lift the cart, but I give them dried figs, a strip of linen, and a smile that I pray will matter. The grandmother clasps my wrist. Her eyes are clouded with smoke and age. "You're the midwife," she rasps. "Livia," I nod. "You helped birth my grandson 15 years ago." She smiles even now. "You told me then, he will be strong." I don't remember the words, but I remember the look of newborn eyes and the faith we pour into moments like that, moments that might be all we have. A field of statues. We pass through a vineyard buried knee-deep in grey. Between the rows, a strange sight. People, frozen, not by fear, by choice. Some kneel in prayer. Others simply sit, hands in their laps, gazing at the mountain, as if waiting for the end. One woman holds a newborn. Her eyes are closed. Is she meditating or already beyond? Sabina tugs at my hand. "Why don't they run?" I answer slowly. "Some wait for gods. Others don't know where else to go." We walk on. The sound of collapse around midday, we hear it, a distant thunderous crack, like the world exhaling wrong. Behind us a cloud surges, not the soft drizzle of earlier ash. This one is black, alive, roiling like a beast with 1,000 arms. Grab Sabina's wrist, we run, and for a moment I forget I am 50 winters old. I run like the girl I once was, barefoot through orchards, heart flying ahead of lungs. We duck into a grove of cypress trees. The wind howls, branches snap, ash falls. Heavier than ever, hot. Clinging, bitter on the tongue, but the cloud does not reach us, not yet. In the shelter of trees, under the trees, time slows. Other refugees gather here, faces half hidden, lips cracked, bodies huddled. One man plays a soft, trembling melody on a lyre. His fingers are bleeding, but he plays. Sabina leans into me. Her voice is barely a whisper. Is this the end of the world? I place my lips to her soot-dusted forehead. It's the end of a world, not the only one. And in my heart, I hope that is true. A stranger's kindness, a woman named Livia, offers us water from a skin she guards like gold. We sip carefully. She's a baker's daughter from Stabii. She lost her mother in the first tremor that morning. She went back inside for the kneading stone, Livia says with a strange, wry smile. She said it was blessed by Venus herself. She laughs, but her eyes betray her. We sit in silence. A while, then she gives Sabina a necklace, a tiny terracotta pendant shaped like a fig. For luck, she says. Or something better than luck. Sabina nods solemnly. Hope. A shrine among stones. Near the edge of the grove, we find a small wayside shrine. It is half buried in ash, the statues blackened but intact. A shrine to Mercury, the traveller's god. I light a piece of dried myrtle, place it at his feet, and I pray, not for safety, not even for salvation, but for strength to continue walking, because walking is all we have left. The fracturing road. By late afternoon, the sky grows darker still. The mountain has disappeared behind. The smoke. Every breath is labor, every footstep is an act of defiance. We pass a man on his knees, digging into the ash with bare hands. I buried my wife here, he tells no one. She was afraid of water. I didn't want her too close to the river. I kneel beside him, press his fingers closed. She would want you to live. He nods, then rises and walks with us. Vision by the river. We finally reach the Sarno. The river is low, its banks dusted in ash. Boats line the edge, some full, some abandoned. A woman in priestess robes stands on the shore, arms raised toward the mountain. The gods are not angry, she says. They are waking us. People avoid her, but I wonder if she's right. Sometimes awakening feels like destruction, a place to rest we do not cross yet. We rest in the reeds. Sabina curls beside me, her pendant clutched in one hand, the letter from our home in the other. I wrap my shawl around us both. The wind howls, but we sleep. For a moment, for a breath, for a dream. Ash in the wind, words lost to fire, a city behind us, a new world ahead, and in between, two. Shadows walking forward, hand in hand. The harbour of Herculaneum. Between fire and foam by evening, the sea is no longer blue. It mirrors the sky, an eerie pewter, stained with ash and smoke. But it is still the only road left. We have reached Herculaneum, smaller than Pompeii, but now swollen with frightened hearts. Arrival in a crowded silence. The streets near the harbour are thick with people, merchants, fishermen, nobles in purple-trimmed togas walking alongside slaves. All boundaries have dissolved. Grief is the great equalizer. Smoke floats between buildings. Torches flicker weakly in the grey dusk. Boats crowd the shore, and every voice whispers the same thing. Leave, leave, leave. But no boat leaves. The sea is choked with debris and fear. A stranger's roof. We are offered shelter by a woman named Livia, an herbalist with sea-green eyes and silence in her movements. Her home sits just above the docks. Inside, the windows are shuttered, but the air carries salt and smoke. She gives us honeyed water and roasted lentils. I want to refuse. She is little, but she insists. The gods repay what I cannot. Sabina falls asleep quickly, her head against my shoulder. Livia and I speak of plants and death, and how sometimes they are the same thing. Refugees of the mind around the harbour, people share rumours. The mountains split in two. There are rivers of fire. Rome has fallen. I've learned not to chase truth here. It shifts like flame. But I know what I've seen and what I've felt. That strange pressure in the bones. That roaring in the chest that is not breath but something deeper. A reminder that we are smaller than we ever thought and more precious than we ever knew. The bodies in the boathouses. We walk to the arches. Boat storage once, now a sanctuary. For those without homes, inside, dozens. Mothers cradling infants, fathers standing guard with eyes glazed. Some pray, some stare, some lie curled together, whispering final stories. Sabina draws near a little girl, playing with a smooth stone. They do not speak, they simply sit together. Children understand things we no longer remember. Whispers, beneath the volcanic. A wind. The wind turns hot in the late hours. We feel it, a change, not from the sea, from behind, from the mountain, a heat not born on the sun, but from within the world itself. Livia looks toward Vesuvius and says only, "It's coming." And we know, farewells in the foamer boat finally leaves the shore. 1. A small fishing vessel, overfilled. Its oars cut through the grey water like fingers through silk. We watch it disappear into the veil. No one speaks. Hope is too fragile now. Even its name tastes bitter, night by the water. That night Sabina and I sit on the seawall. She leans into me. Our cloaks are wet with mist and sweat. "What happens if the fire comes here?" she asks. I don't answer right away, because I'm not sure. Instead I ask, "What do we do if it doesn't?" She blinks at me. "Then we keep walking?" I nod. "Always forward. An old song in the wind I hum, a lullaby my mother sang when storms came. Sleep, my dove, in olive shade. Dream beyond where winds have played. Fire fades, and stars will bend. You'll wake when ashes find their end." Sabina doesn't cry, but she leans her head to my lap and breathes in time with the waves. The beginning of the end. Shortly before midnight, the ground moves again, a slow, deep pulse. The sea shifts, pulling back unnaturally. People scream. We run to the steps of the boathouses, not to hide, to help. We lift a child. Steady an old man, guide a blind woman forward. In the distance a sound rises like the world cracking in half. We stand between two gods, the fire behind us, the sea before us, and in between, hope in a human shape. A girl with a fig pendant, a woman who once believed only in birth, now learning what it means to die, and still to care. When the mountain walked, the pyroclastic cloud, it came not with fire, but with silence. A hush fell over Herculaneum just before it arrived. Not the hush of peace, but the hush of something watching, of something waiting. The sea had gone still. The mountain, after its long fury, fell into breathless quiet, and in that silence, something ancient and final began to move. A whisper. Before the roar, Sabina stirred first. The night had been restless, the air so thick with ash we could barely draw breath. People coughed in their sleep. Others moaned quietly, trapped in dreams or memories. I had held her close, shielding her with the shawl Livia had given us. But in that moment, before dawn, before day, before death, Sabina sat up. "Mama," she whispered, "the sky is wrong." I looked, and it was. It glowed, but not with sunlight. A strange pallor, like molten bronze and bruised violet, lit the edges of the smoke. Then came the smell, like the heart of a forge, like the breath of the gods after they'd wept and burned. A wall with no face from the edge of the harbour. I saw it, rolling toward us, not as flame, but as cloud, but not like any cloud the heavens ever sent. It pulsed, it crawled, it swallowed. grey, black and brown all at once, shot through with lightning that did not come from the sky but from within, hugged the earth, not rising like smoke but crouching, running, hunting. The last race cries rang out. One long, collective scream. The word run lost all meaning. It became instinct, muscle, breath. I grabbed Sabina's hand and pulled her. We didn't think. We just moved, stumbling past fallen roof tiles, bodies half buried in ash, a dog barking wildly. In circles, we ran toward the edge of town, toward the vineyard paths and crumbling walls that led nowhere but away. But the cloud was faster, the breath of the underworld. It hit like a thought too big to hold. The heat, not felt, but entered. It did not burn from outside in. It filled us, the way grief fills, the way awe fills. My ears rang, my vision flickered, time stuttered. I turned once, just once, and saw the harbour vanish. People turned to outlines, a priest frozen mid-prayer, a girl clutching a doll made of straw and ivory. They were there, then they were statues, then shadows, then gone. A moment caught in amber, but something spared us, a low wall of volcanic stone. A bend in the path. We ducked, fell, curled behind it. Not safety, but a pause. The air blazed. The wind screamed. The world blurred into white and red and pitch. We did not speak. Our hands locked so tightly my fingers bled. But Sabina was still there. And I, by some small mercy, was still breathing. Visions in the dust for a long time. I could see nothing, only colours behind my eyelids, shapes of memory, my mother's loom, my first birth as a midwife, when the cord had wrapped around the babe's throat, and I had whispered to her, "Breathe, little one, come into the light." Scent of fig trees in the summer wind, the song my father sang as he carved wood at the end of day, and then a voice, small, cracked, real. Mama, Sabina, still holding on, still breathing, waking in the ash. When I opened my eyes again, the world was changed. The cloud had passed. It left behind silence. Not the hush of peace, but the stillness of a world remade. Ash blanketed everything in a soft white coat. Buildings stood like bones. Trees had no leaves. Statues had no faces. It was not Pompeii, not Herculaneum, not Rome. It was somewhere else now, a place beyond names, beyond maps. Footprints in the grey. We moved again. Each footstep left a perfect print. In the ash. A reverse echo. Proof that we were still here. Proof that we still mattered. We passed what had been a garden, now a courtyard of ghosts. A marble fountain still gurgled, though the water was hot and metallic. A child's sandal lay beside. It not burned, just waiting. The shape of memory. We found Lolia's home again. The roof had collapsed, but her garden, her precious herbs, remained beneath a fallen beam. I knelt there, brushed the ash from a sprig of rue, and placed it behind Sabina's ear. She smiled. Real one, small, crooked, alive. A promise to the ashes as the sun, faint and orange, rose above the curtain of smoke. I whispered to the city, "I will remember you." To the harbour, to the boathouses, to the men and women turned to dust. You are not lost. To the mountain, you are not God. You are grief. You are story. You are wound and wonder. And to Sabina, we go forward. The mountain walked and the world changed, but we walked too, and somewhere far beyond the flame, we will build again. The road beyond the ash, into the hinterlands. We walked with the mountain behind us, not because we were strong, not because we were brave, but because there was nowhere else to go. The cloud had passed, the heat had not. The ash fell slower now, in drifts like snow, warm and clinging, each flake the ghost of something lost, a tile, a name, a prayer. The road had no signpost, only the tracks of others who had fled before us. Some ended suddenly, some went on. We followed the ones that went. On the first mile, Sabina's hand was small in mine. We said little. Her fig pendant swung against her chest with each step, clicking softly. It was the only sound we trusted. The trees were grey silhouettes. Once, this had been farmland. Rows of olive groves, fig trees, barley fields. We passed a vineyard where the grapes still hung, shriveled but untouched. The vines were strong. Even. Now they reached for the sun. Echoes of the living by midday. We saw the first signs of others. Not faces, just traces. A clay jug, half full of water, left beneath a sycamore tree. A woolen cloak draped over a broken statue of Venus. A line of sandals pressed into the ash, leading away from the mountain. The people were gone, but they had been. That was enough. It told us we were not alone. Not yet. The shepherd. Near the crest of a low hill, we found him. A shepherd, perhaps 30 winters old, his skin weathered like bark. He had a single sheep tied to a length of rope. The rest, he said, had scattered into the smoke. He asked no questions, offered us bread, stale but warm from the sun, and a pouch of dried dates. The gods have broken open the sky, he said. I did not correct him, not about the gods, not about the sky. Some truths are shaped by sorrow, some truths are allowed. We thanked him and moved on. Fields of smoke. The sun climbed high, its heat, once. A joy now felt intrusive. The land smoked from beneath stones, from holes in the ground, vents where the earth hissed quietly, like it was still whispering secrets to itself. Sabina asked if the world would ever be green again. I did not know, but I told her, where seeds fall, something will always grow. She nodded, then picked up a handful of grey soil and let it fall like sand. An abandoned villa. We took shelter at the edge of a ruined villa. Its columns had cracked, but the atrium pool still held water. I knelt beside it and dipped a cloth, wiping Sabina's face and hands. She shivered at the coolness. It's like we were never people, she whispered. I knew what she meant. We were not Pompeians anymore, not Romans, not even survivors, just shadows that hadn't been caught yet. But there was comfort in the water. It remembered what the sky had, forgotten. The story of the clay figurine inside the villa. Sabina found a small clay figure, a woman holding a child. Perhaps once part of a household shrine. She cradled it like it mattered, and maybe it did. I watched her for a long time, then said, "There were mothers before us. There will be mothers after." She did not look up, but she smiled, and I saw in her something stronger than I'd seen in any temple. The memory tree in. The afternoon, we passed an ancient olive tree, twisted, gnarled, hollowed by age and lightning. At its base were scraps of cloth, tied to branches like offerings, old coins, bits of jewelry, even a child's tooth. I recognized it, a tree of wishes. Long before Rome came here, the villagers believed it listened. Sabina tied a strip from her hem around a low branch. "What did you wish for?" I asked. She didn't answer, but I saw the pendant in her fist and knew, a voice in the wind. We slept briefly beneath the tree. When I woke, dusk was painting the sky, and a voice drifted through the air, low and cracked, singing in a language I didn't know. We followed it down a path lined with blackened thistle. At its end, a woman with white hair stirring a pot beside a crumbling farmhouse. She looked up and said, "The mountain has finally eaten its fill." Then offered us food without question. The crone of the hinterlands. She called herself Vibia. No one else called her anything now. She lived alone, except for 2 hens and a blind dog. She spoke of the old ways, of stars that whispered, of rivers that remembered names. She said she knew the mountain would erupt. The trees had told her. I didn't believe her, but I listened, because the world was too strange now for certainty, and her voice was like smoke and lullabies. Beneath a new sky that night, we stayed beneath her roof. There were holes in it, but the Stars were visible, more than I had ever seen. Sabina slept with the clay figurine beside her. I watched the stars shift, slow and eternal, and I whispered, "If the world can end in one day, then maybe it can begin again in one more." The stars did not answer, but they stayed, and that was something, a map with no lines in the morning. Livia gave us directions, not a map, just gestures. Follow the cracked road until you smell rosemary, then turn where the fig trees grow wild. It was enough. We thanked her. She touched my forehead and said, "Tell your story." "Why?" I asked. "Because the ones who don't will be buried twice." We left with our feet lighter and our hearts slightly less full of ash. The wild fig grove, just as she'd said, the cracked road bent into a grove of untended fig trees. They had grown in every direction, an orchard untamed, rich with purple. Fruit, Sabina reached up and picked one. Juice ran down her fingers. She offered it to me. "It tastes like before," she said. I nodded, then plucked my own, and for a moment we were not fleeing, we were simply living, onward to the unknown. The path turned to stones again, and the ash thinned. We saw green, not much, but enough. A thistle, bloom, a beetle scuttling across a rock, signs that the world still wanted to go on. Sabina hummed under her breath, the same lullaby I'd sung to her beside the harbour, and I joined her, two voices, not crying, not calling, just singing to the road, to the sky, to whatever came next. We walked beyond the ash. We did not know what waited, but we walked, because we still had feet, because we still had names, because somewhere, someone had to remember the ones who couldn't, and because the road was still there, waiting. The ones who stayed, Pompeii in ash and echo one. In the hush that follows fire, in the days that followed, as Sabina and I moved farther from the mountain's shadow, my mind returned to the city I could no longer see. Pompeii no longer burned. It no longer bled, it no longer cried out. It was quiet, as if it had never existed. But I remembered every corner of her, her size, her heat, the way she smelled in the early morning after the bakers lit their ovens. No one else would speak for her, so I began to, even if only to myself. The dream of Crispus, the first dream, came after the sixth night. I was lying beside Sabina, beneath a thatched roof, deep in the forested hills, when I saw Crispus again. He stood in the garden courtyard, sunlight glinting on his shoulders. He turned and smiled at me. He was not burned, not afraid. He held out a fig, half-bitten, and said, "Tell the others I laughed at the end." I reached for him, but he dissolved like steam, and I woke with tears on my cheeks. A street remembered. I began reciting the names of the streets aloud. Reggio 6, the House of the Faun, the stepping stones in the street where the boys played games, with pebbles and bits of broken glass, the bakery where Marcus the cripple worked the grindstone with only one arm, the tavern where a girl with crooked teeth sang songs about sailors and rain. I said them again and again, as if names alone could keep them breathing. Sabina listened, eyes wide, never interrupting. She was too young to know the weight of memory, but she bore it with me. The statue in the atrium. I remembered the atrium of the Domus. I visited only once. A client house, wealthy, pompous, lined with statues. One had struck me even then, a woman carved of white marble, holding an amphora from which water had once flowed. Now I saw her again in my mind's eye, but her face was cracked, her arm broken off. Still she stood, still she poured, even in the silence. The voices in the wall. Sometimes I heard voices in sleep, whispers, fragments. The child, take the child. Do not leave me. It is only smoke. It will pass. It will pass. I did not know if they were real, but I answered them. I remember you. You are not gone. You are not ash. You are echo. 6. The midwife's hands one morning, I woke with my hands clenched, still stiff with imagined birth. I could feel the heat, the wetness, the tension of bringing life forward. But there was no child, only memory. I had brought over 40 infants into the world before the mountain's wrath, each with a cry, a gasp, a name. I whispered them to the trees. Let them be carried by wind. Let the gods remember. Ursus, the girl with the lame foot. I remembered one girl. Her name was Tula. She was 10 and walked with a limp. Something wrong from birth. But she never complained. She used to bring flowers to my door unasked, marigolds usually. They make the spirits smile, she'd say. I do not know if she made it out, but I imagine her even now crouching behind a wall, waiting for silence. And I leave marigolds on the road wherever I find them, just in case she passes by. The tomb, market song. The market had a rhythm, not just noise, music, vendors calling, pots clanging, boys laughing, dogs barking. Each day had a melody. It changed with the season. In spring, it was quick and sprightly. In summer, slow and thick with the weight of fruit. I tried to hum the tune one evening. Sabina joined in, unsure, and then the forest was full of it, a memory brought back not in words, but in sound. Pompeii was still singing, if only faintly. The ones who did not run, some did not flee. I know this. Some chose to stay, old ones too tired. Young ones, too unaware, brave ones, foolish ones, faithful ones. They stayed. I do not judge them. I light a fire each night and whisper, your names are not gone. They are only waiting. And the flame flickers, like it nods. 10. What the ash covered. The ash did not only bury people, it buried laughter, plans, arguments that were never resolved. Lovers who had just quarreled and would never make peace. A mother's lullaby unfinished. Young man's hope to impress a girl at the well. Pompeii was not perfect, but it was alive, and the ash, for all its silence, cannot erase life. Of gods and men there had been altars everywhere, to Fortuna, to Venus, to Apollo. Now I wondered, were they only stone? Had the gods spoken, warned, or had they fallen silent the same day we did? In my heart I think they wept, just as we did, and now they wait, like us, for someone to believe again. The stranger in white. On the 10th day we passed a traveller. In white robes, he did not speak, only placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "You carry a city in your bones," then walked on. I did not stop him. Some messengers come once, and that is enough. I thought of his words all night, and found peace in them. In the presence of birds, we came to a small meadow. It was quiet, except for birds. Not many, but enough. Finches. 1. Raven. Their wings moved like they were stitching the sky back together. Sabina laughed when one nearly landed on her head. It had been days since she'd laughed. Smiled, and felt Pompeii smile with me. A place to bury the names. I found a flat stone near the riverbank. I took a stick and began to etch into it. Not graves, just names. Not all, just a few. Tula Crispus, my mother. The baker's boy with the freckled cheeks. Sabina asked if she could add one. She chose a name I did not know, and that made it holy. The dust will settle one evening. While Sabina slept and the fire was low, I realized something. The dust was beginning to settle, not just on the land, on us. Not the kind you brush away, but the kind that becomes part of the skin, part of the self. We would never be clean again, but we would be whole in a new way. When the rain came, the first rain came without warning. It struck the leaves like applause. I stepped into it, arms open, let it run down my face, soak my dress, fill the spaces ash had made. It smelled of earth and forgiveness. Sabina joined me. We stood there, shivering, smiling, alive. Rain has a way of turning endings into beginnings. The final vision. That night, I dreamed of Pompeii, one last time. It was not burning, it was whole. Children ran in the streets, the fountains flowed, the temples were clean and golden in the sun. Crispus stood beside the baker. Tula handed me a flower. The sky was blue, and I heard a voice, my own, saying, "You are remembered. You are remembered. You are remembered." What remains not stone, not walls, not names carved in marble, but stories, smiles, laughter in a forgotten courtyard, the smell of bread, the hush before birth. What remains is not what is buried. What remains is what we carry forward, what we pass down, and I, Livia, daughter of Lucia, midwife of Pompeii, am still carrying. We walked on, through ash, through silence, through the spaces where a city once sang, and still she sings, softly. If you listen, she is there. Letters to the dead, the memory keepers. The first letter we came upon a ruined villa, half swallowed by vines. Its walls stood like broken ribs of a giant long dead. Inside, on a table still standing, lay a wooden stylus and wax tablet, cracked, but usable. I held it in my hands. It was small, simple, but something in me stirred. I sat, and I wrote. To the ones I could not save. To the mother whose child I delivered and whose face I have forgotten. To the girl with the lame foot and the crooked teeth. To the laughing boy who always ran barefoot across the forum's stones. I did not stop writing until night fell. Sabina watched in silence. That night she asked if she could write too. The voice of the ash, when dry, crumbles softly underfoot. But when it rains, it hardens like stone. We passed through a valley, where the ash had preserved shapes, almost human, not corpses, but ghosts in clay. Sabina whispered, "They look like they're praying." We knelt beside one. I left a sprig of rosemary. She left her drawing, a stick-figure girl with flowers in her hair. We stayed there a long while, saying nothing, just breathing, listening, as if the wind might carry voices back. The memory keepers found others like us in the hills, displaced, staggered, changed but alive. One old woman carried baskets full of tiles. "From my roof," she said. "I won't leave them behind. They were made by my husband's hands." A young boy collected glass beads and named each one for someone he'd lost. Others built small shrines using charred wood and scraps of cloth. We shared fire with them, and in that circle we began to tell stories, not about what we had seen, but who we had seen, and in the telling, the dead grew warm again. The ink of Tears ink was hard to find. We crushed berries, boiled bark, used soot mixed with animal fat. The letters were crude at first, smudged, but they carried weight. I carved names into bark, etched symbols into stone. When I ran out of space, I used the backs of leaves. Every night I folded each letter and placed them in a satchel, heavy with sorrow, but also something else. Continuance. The girl who remembered songs. In one village, we met a girl who sang. She had fled with her family, but her sister had not made it. Now she sang only her sister's favorite songs, every day, without fail. If I stop singing, she will disappear. Her voice was soft, unsure, but it grew stronger as she sang. By the third song she was weeping, so was I. Sabina hummed along, off-key. It didn't matter. It was not the melody that mattered. It was the act. Whispering stones in a grove beyond the river, we built a cairn. Each stone was placed for someone we remembered. With each stone, we whispered their name. Sabina laid a smooth white one and whispered, "For the lady who gave me honey." I placed 3 for 3 children I delivered in one night the spring before. Others came, and the cairn grew until it resembled a tower of voices, each stone a syllable, a breath held in time. The midwife's book, one morning I stitched together. Scraps of parchment with cord from my tunic, a book of sorts. I called it The Midwife's Book of Echoes. Each page held a story, not of birth, but of presence. A girl who painted pottery with dots like stars, an old man who never ate meat because he believed animals could understand speech, a merchant who gave away figs to children if they said please. None of them were famous, but they had lived, and they deserved to be remembered. The shrine beneath the olive tree. We found an olive tree still bearing fruit, untouched by fire, its branches low and wide, perfect for hanging offerings. Sabina tied her scarf to one. I added the sandals of a child I'd found in the ruins days earlier, too small for walking. Others added trinkets, lockets, a carved comb, spoon with initials etched on the back. We sat beneath the tree and wept, not just for loss, but for the beauty of memory. When dreams become history, my dreams were changing. They were no longer frantic, no longer full of fire and screams. Now they were quieter. They showed me people walking along rivers in sunlit courtyards. They were not calling for help. They were living, as if time had split, and somewhere Pompeii still existed. Alive, whole, seen, not through ash, but through story, too. The school without walls Sabina wanted to learn letters, so I taught her. Each morning I drew one in the dirt, told her a name that began with it. A is for Aurelia, the baker's daughter. B is for Belus, the horse who liked figs. C is for Cornelius, the old soldier who never stopped telling stories. Soon she could write full names, then full thoughts. She wrote her own letter to the dead. Dear Papa, I remember how you held me on your shoulders. I know you are watching. I still laugh sometimes. I hope you still laugh too. Chapter. In the silence of clay, we came across a collapsed villa, roofless, its walls sunk. In the center was a kiln, still intact. Inside, we found rows of unfired pots, all blank. Sabina had an idea. We took the pots, drew faces on them. Simple eyes, smiles, tears. We left them in the forest, on paths, near rivers, not for use, for witness. So even if no one remembered the people of Pompeii, the pots would. 12. The archivist. We met a man near Beneventum. He called himself an archivist of sorrows. He had collected hundreds of items from the ash, rings, scraps of scrolls, bits of mosaics, but he didn't hoard them. He displayed them on simple wooden tables. Each had a story, some true, some imagined. I don't care if I get it wrong, he said. What matters is that they are not forgotten. He let Sabina add to his table. She chose a drawing of her street with a cat on the roof. He placed it in the center. Mut. The storyteller's fire in. One village, they kept a fire burning for a whole month. Each night someone sat beside it and told a story of someone they had lost. By the end of the month, they said, "The souls are full now. They can rest." I sat by that fire, holding Sabina's hand. I told the story of the woman who gave birth in the middle of a market, how the women shielded her with baskets and cloaks, how the baby was born with his eyes wide open. Everyone laughed. Everyone cried. The fire crackled like a heartbeat. Letters in the wind one morning. I tore my parchment into strips and tied them to a tree branch. The wind lifted them, scattered them, carried them. Some said this was foolish, that words must be stored, preserved, but I believed the wind knew better, that the sky might hold stories, better than any scroll, that those gone might read them in clouds. Return to the river. We returned to the riverbank, where we had left names etched in stone. The water had risen. Some names were smoothed over, but some remained. Sabina touched one, traced it with her finger. "Even if they fade," she said, "they were here." I nodded. Not everything must last forever, but everything must matter, even if only once. The Festival of Smoke and Stars in. Midsummer, the villagers held a new festival, not for harvest, not for gods, but for memory. They lit lanterns, let them drift into the sky. Each lantern carried a word: hope, forgive, return. My lantern carried no word, only silence. but it shone the brightest of them all. Sabina said so, and I believe her. 7. The grave. Of no one, we found a small stone, marked only by an X, no name, no offering, forgotten. Sabina insisted we give it a name, so we did, invented one, invented a life. She was a weaver, loved rosemary, laughed too loud, feared bees, missed her sister. We wept for her and placed a flower on the stone, and suddenly she existed. A letter to myself one evening. I wrote a letter not to the dead, but to myself. You are still here, still breathing. You carry ashes in your bones, but you also carry sunlight. You are not only witness. You are continuation. You are not what was lost. You are what is left. I folded it, placed it beneath my sleeping mat. It helped, more than I expected. The final entry in the Book of Echoes. I reached the final page. It felt like the closing of a door, but not locked, only still. Let this book bear witness. Let these pages whisper. Let the dust know it is remembered. Let the children of ash find rest. We are all letters, waiting to be read. And I, Livia, midwife of Pompeii, am still writing. 20. Fade into sleep. Sabina sleeps beside me. The stars are bright tonight. The mountain far behind us now is a shadow on the horizon, but I feel no fear, only a quiet warmth, a hush, a sacred stillness. I close my eyes, and in the dark I see the city. Again, whole, alive. Every step I take is a sentence, every breath a memory, and the dead, they are never far. They walk beside me always. The garden of the reclaimed, where roots still grow. The seeds we carried, we left the river behind with more than memories. In a pouch at my waist, I carried seeds, lavender, rue, chickpea, mustard. They had been hidden in a pot behind my old garden wall, survivors like us. Sabina asked, "Why do you carry them?" And I told her, because something still wants to grow. 2. The hill of forgotten names. On the 3rd day of our wandering, we crested a hill thick with grasses. There, etched into stone, was a single word. Sana, Latin for healed. No marker, no tomb, just that word worn smooth. Sabina traced it with her hand. "Do you think someone got better here?" I looked around, the breeze gentle, the earth soft, and I nodded, yes, here. Someone began again. The village that chose to stay. We stumbled into a village built on ruins, stones from villas reassembled into new homes. There was no shame in what was broken. The broken had been used, mended, woven into something alive. The villagers didn't ask who we were. They offered bread, milk, and a place near the fire. Their leader, a woman with silver-threaded hair, said, "We do not mourn forever. We plant, we build. We sing the names of the fallen, but we do not follow them into silence." And so we stayed. The garden beneath the ash, the soil was hard, but not dead. We cleared it slowly, Sabina with her fingers, me with a stick. Ash peeled back like a grey, skin revealing rich earth below. When I pressed my hand into it, it was warm, alive. We planted the seeds by moonlight, one by one. Sabina spoke to each. "Grow well. The world needs you," I whispered too. "For the mothers, for the daughters, for the stories left untold." The return of scent weeks passed, and one morning I awoke to the scent of lavender, faint, subtle, but real. Sabina danced. "It's growing! It's growing!" We fell to our knees and wept beside that tiny sprout, because it meant more than survival. It meant renewal. The air smelled of purpose, of something coming back. The healer's hut in the village. I was called midwife, though no child had yet been born. Still they came to me, a boy with a cough that lingered, a woman whose husband had vanished in the ash, an old man with legs that wouldn't walk, but dreams that wouldn't stop. I had no herbs at first, no salves, only stories. I listened, and in return they told me theirs. Healing began not in the body, but in the telling. The tree with fire in its bark beyond the garden stood a lone tree, blackened by fire, but still rooted. Its bark was cracked, charred, but from a fissure emerged a single green shoot, alive. Hopeful, I made it a shrine, not with offerings, but with attention. Each day I sat beneath it and wrote in my book of echoes. Sabina hung her drawings on its branches. The tree watched us, and we watched it back, both remembering, both reclaiming. Birth among the ruins. The first labor came suddenly. A young woman, barely more than a girl, arrived at my hut. Her waters had broken, and fear clouded her face. We lit a fire, laid down cloth, and as she cried out, I felt my own heart steady. I was back in Pompeii, yet not. I was myself, yet more. The child came swiftly, crying, strong. The mother laughed, though tears still clung to her lashes. What shall we name her? Sabina asked. The mother smiled. Livia. The naming circle, it became a tradition. Every full moon, the village gathered. We lit a circle of lamps, and each person spoke one name they wished to remember. Sometimes it was a child, sometimes a horse. Once it was a house. We named them, the elder said, not to bind them, but to keep them near. We were no longer a people of ash. We were people of roots. The waters speak. Again, rain fell one evening, hard, relentless. We feared the ash would rise again, turn to sludge, swallow us whole. But it did not. Instead, it sank. It fed the soil, and in the garden, rows of green erupted where once there was only grey. We danced in the rain, let it wash our skin. Sabina held her tongue out, caught the drops. Taste like olives, she said, and we laughed. For the first time in months, we laughed without ache. When the animals returned, first came the bees, then lizards, then birds. At dawn, a fox padded across our garden wall. It paused, stared, then vanished. The animals, like us, had fled the mountain. Now they were coming home. Sabina left food for them. We're sharing, she said, and I agreed. The earth was no longer just ours. It never had been. A marriage beneath the tree. Two villagers stood beneath the firebark tree, hands clasped, eyes shining. I stood beside them, not as priestess, but as witness. They did not speak vows. They planted a fig sapling, that was all. That was enough. Commitment not in words, but in roots. Crack. Sabina's letter to the future. One day, Sabina said she wanted to bury a letter. For someone who hasn't been born yet, she wrote slowly, carefully, folded it 3 times, tied it with a ribbon made from her old tunic, then buried it beneath the lavender. So they'll know we were here. I added a letter too. Dear future, we once survived the unthinkable. So can you. 14. The return to silence. There were still moments of grief, at twilight when the shadows lengthened, when a laugh echoed strangely, when I looked west and imagined the mountains still smouldering. But the silence no longer frightened me. It was the hush of a resting world, not a dead one. The garden did not speak, but it grew. That was its language. When the children sang one evening, the village children began to hum a tune. No one knew where it came from. It passed from voice to voice like pollen. Even the elders began to hum. Sabina whispered, maybe it's the mountain's lullaby. Perhaps it was, a melody rising from the deep, turning ash to air, sorrow to sound. The festival of first fruit, the first harvest, was small, but we feasted as if it were a banquet. Flatbread with mustard greens, chickpea stew, a lavender drink that made everyone sleepy. At the end of the meal, we placed a portion on a stone near the shrine tree. For those not here, I said, but always with us, Sabina added. The breeze stirred, the stars brightened, and the night felt full. A letter to Pompeii wrote it one morning as the sun rose. You are not gone. You live in our steps, in our rituals, in the way we carry water, break bread, cradle the sick. You are in every seed that grows from scorched ground. You are not ash, you are root. I folded it, tucked it in my book of echoes. It belonged there with all the rest. The dream of the white horse. I dreamed of a white horse running through the ruins, its hooves stirring clouds of ash. But where it passed, flowers bloomed. Sabina said, "That means the dead are riding with us now." I liked that. They were no longer behind us. They were beside us, guides, not ghosts. Eyes. The last of the ash is washed away. One spring morning, a heavy rain fell. By midday, every roof, every garden, every face had been washed clean. Sabina stepped into the village square barefoot. "It's gone," she whispered, and it was. Not all, but most. The ash that clung to our skin for so long had finally let go. In the garden of the reclaimed now, I sit beneath the firebark tree. Sabina draws pictures in the dust. Children laugh. Behind us, the garden hums. Somewhere a bird sings. The book of echoes is full now, its pages crinkled, its edges worn. But I write one more line. Here, life returned. And I believe it, because I see it, because I feel it, because even after everything, the earth remembered how to bloom. The echoes beneath our feet, where memory sleeps, stones with names. Worn away some mornings, I walk alone to the ridge above the village. There are stones scattered there, older than the ash, older than us. They bear faint lines where names once were, but wind and rain have carved silence into them. Still I sit with them, not to read, but to listen. Sabina asked once, "If we don't remember their names, do they disappear?" And I answered, "No, they become part of us." Because every step we take, every breath we draw, is shaped by the ones who came before, even if we no longer say their names aloud. The path that wasn't there one afternoon, I followed a trail of crushed herbs. Time, I think. It led beyond. The fields, through a thicket of olive and cypress. There was no road, no sign, but the path had feeling. A sense of having been walked once, long ago. I followed it, and at its end I found nothing, only sunlight slanting through leaves, a single broken amphora buried half in moss. And yet I felt I had arrived somewhere ancient, somewhere kind. The quiet library. The villagers began to collect stories, not in scrolls, but in voices. Each elder was paired with a child. Each child listened, wrote. We stored the writings in clay jars sealed with wax. Not for now, for some day. We called it the quiet library. Because silence, we realized, is not the absence of stories, it's the space that holds them. The loam of dreams and sleep. I began to dream of Pompeii again, but not as it was during the fire, not the thunder, not the screams. I dreamed of market stalls and bread ovens, of weaving looms, of the laugh of my friend Aurelia in the dye house, each detail so precise, so gentle. It was as if the earth itself remembered and offered it back to me in sleep. When I woke, I pressed my hands to the soil. It felt warmer, more human. The circle beneath the tree. We began to gather not only on full moons, but any day someone remembered something precious. We sat beneath the firebark tree and spoke. I remember the way my father hummed while he carved wood. I remember how the garden smelled the morning after the first frost. I remember the silk my mother kept hidden in a chest. Each story was a brick, and the circle became our invisible house, built of memory, warmed by time. The thread of the healer one girl began to follow me as I made rounds. Her name was Tullia. She asked endless questions. Why does mint help with stomach pain? Why do you burn rosemary when someone dies? Why do you carry an empty jar in your satchel? And I told her, because healing isn't just herbs and hands. It's remembering how to care. It's the ritual of showing up again and again. She began to carry her own satchel, and I began to call her apprentice. The shadow under the mountain Vesuvius no longer smoked, but its shadow still stretched across us at sunset. Long, quiet, present, it no longer frightened us, but we honored it. Each year on the day of the falling ash, we walked silently to the highest ridge, not to mourn, but to remember. We laid bundles of thyme and lavender on the stones, then returned in silence. Grief had softened, but it had not vanished. It had grown roots. The words beneath the words one day, I found an old woman speaking softly to a tree. I asked her what she was saying. She smiled. Nothing, I'm listening. I waited, and then, slowly I began to hear it too. Not speech, not language, but the presence of meaning, like a song too deep to sing aloud. Later that night I wrote, "Not everything that matters can be said." The empty house at the edge of the village had remained untouched since the day we arrived, its windows shuttered, its door warped with time. One spring, the shutters fell. So we entered. Inside were jars of dried lentils, a pair of sandals, a comb with dark hair still in its teeth. Nothing had been stolen, nothing spoiled. It was a memory sealed in silence. We cleaned it, lit a lamp, and turned it into a house for travelers, a resting place for the ones still walking. A marriage of wind and stone, two widows declared their union one evening. They had shared a home for years, but never said the words aloud, until that day. They built a cairn together in the orchard, stone upon stone. No priest, no feast, just wind in the trees, and hands holding fast. "We love," they said. "That is enough." And it was. Sabina's silence one morning, Sabina did not speak. She only drew. All day, dozens of sheets strewn across the hut, mountains, rivers, a mother with closed eyes and a child planting a seed. Beside her, at dusk, she looked at me and said, "I miss my mother's humming." We lay down then, together, and I hummed for her, a lullaby from long ago, soft as dust on stone. The festival of dust and light. We began a new festival, born not from the old ways, but from what we had become. Everyone wore clothes in shades of grey, ash stone, memory. But at night, we lit hundreds of lamps, every rooftop, every path, every garden wall. The grey became gold, not in denial, but in transformation. We called it the Festival of Dust and Light, because from dust we had made something luminous. The stranger with a familiar voice. One evening, a stranger arrived. She was wrapped in wool, her hands cracked by travel. She asked for Livia, me. I did not recognize her, but her voice. It carried a rhythm I had once known. She had been a girl in Pompeii once, an apprentice, in a bakery. Her name, Lucilla. She had fled north, survived. She took my hands in hers. "You were the one who told my sister not to fear the pain," she said. "She died, but without terror. I never thanked you." We sat all night saying nothing more. Sometimes gratitude lives best in quiet. The well beneath the vine we dug, a well in the southern field. The soil was stubborn, but we found water clean, cold, steady. We named it Fons Pietatis, the fountain of grace. We planted a vine beside it. Each time someone drank, they gave thanks aloud. To those who labored before us, to those who never returned, to those who kept the path alive, the well never ran dry. The return of birth. That summer, 5 babies were born, each strong, each full of breath and sound. My hands, so used to grief, now caught life again and again. Tullia helped. Sabina painted each infant on cloth. We made lullabies. From the names of the lost, each child was born not into sorrow, but into story. The book of silence. I began a second book. Blank pages, no ink. Each page held a pressed leaf, a lock of hair, a thread from a tunic. Each item from someone who had, passed, not as a record, but as a presence. "Why no words?" Sabina asked. "Because love outlasts language," I told her. The snow that fell like ash, that winter it snowed. Soft, powdery, grey-white, it covered the trees, the garden, the shrine. Sabina stood still, her arms open wide. "It's like the ash," she said, and I nodded, but this time it did not burn, it blessed. The pilgrim from Herculaneum, a man, arrived limping with a satchel of stones. He had collected them from what remained of Herculaneum. He spread them on our table, each marked with a single etched letter. Together they spelled, "We remain." He wept. We did not try to stop him. We let him mourn. Then we offered soup and a place to sleep. The garden in the mind. As the years passed, the garden changed. Some plants died, others flourished, children grew, elders passed, but the garden within, the memory of what we had planted together, that remained untouched, unchanging, alive, we could walk through it in dreams, feel the loam, smell the herbs, hear the bees. The inner garden was the one time could not take, where memory sleeps. Now, in the quiet of dusk, I sit by the fire and listen to the night. Tullia hums as she prepares her satchel. Sabina writes her own book of echoes. I am older now, but not alone. The echoes beneath our feet are not haunting. They are holding. They carry us not downward but forward, because memory does not end. It rests, sleeps, becomes soil from which something new will always grow. The waters that remember, rites of the river one, the whisper. Beneath the surface it began with a dream, not mine, Sabina's. She came to me in the pale hush before dawn, her breath like fog as she knelt beside my sleeping mat. They called. "To me," she said. Her hands trembled. "From the water." She described the dream slowly, haltingly. A river, wide and silver beneath a full moon, lined with broken amphorae and veils of smoke drifting just above the current. Women stood knee-deep in the flow, their eyes closed, mouths open in song, though no sound escaped. One held out her hand. Sabina reached for it, then woke. The eldest's memory. We asked the village's eldest, a quiet woman with clouded eyes named Lucia, whether such a place existed. She nodded without hesitation. "The memory river," she whispered. "It's real. But only those the river calls will find it." She touched Sabina's hand. "You must go. The ones you've lost have need of you." "Is it safe?" I asked. Lucia smiled gently. "No, but it is sacred." 3. Preparations for the pilgrimage word spread. Soon others wished to come, those haunted by memories they could not name, by dreams they could not shake. Tullia prepared bundles of herbs for protection, rosemary, rue, and river reed. We packed, slowly, deliberately, simple food, soft cloths, a thin iron knife for ritual, though we hoped not to use it. Children helped plait prayer ropes, woven with beads, bits of bone, and dried rose petals. We left at dusk, following the stars, always toward the sound of water. The long walk to the waters. The journey took 2 days. We passed no travelers, only the hush of fields, the crackle of underbrush, the coo of doves in the high branches. At night, we slept in a clearing ringed with pines, fireless, listening to the heartbeat of crickets and the shifting of dreams. On the 3rd morning, we heard it, the murmur, the river. It spoke like someone remembering a name they had not said in a long, long time. First glimpse of the memory. River, it was unlike any water I had ever seen. The river ran wide, its current neither fast nor slow, but exact, measured, constant, knowing. Mist clung to its surface, moving with purpose, not chance. Boulders, rounded smooth by centuries, jutted from the bank like altars. Here and there, the remnants of old offerings. Broken rings, pale clay jars, small wooden dolls worn to featureless ovals. "This is where the ancestors come to drink," Lucia whispered, "and where the grieving come to be emptied." Ritual of the first light at sunrise, we stepped into the shallows. The water was cold, but not cruel. It wrapped around our ankles, then calves, like old hands gently pressing. Each person carried an object of grief, a token of memory. Sabina held a strand of her mother's hair, sealed in wax. Tulia carried her first bundle of herbs, wilted, cracked, never used. I brought a spool of thread, once meant to mend a child's tunic. The river did not ask for the story, only the offering. We let them go, one by one, watched them drift and disappear. The speaking stones farther upstream, the river narrowed. A shelf of stone lay half submerged, flat, black, veined with quartz. Here we knelt and placed our palms upon it, and we listened, not with ears, but with something deeper. Each of us heard something different. Tulia wept without words. Sabina smiled faintly and whispered, "She forgives me." I heard no voice, only silence that felt like approval. The night of echoing names, that night a fire was built from driftwood and dried river reeds. We sat in a circle and spoke aloud the names of the dead. Each name was repeated by the group. Slowly, reverently. Some had lost whole families, others one child. One man could speak no names, only sob. That was enough. Each name we spoke, we cast into the fire, bound in a reed-woven shape. The smoke rose and drifted toward the river, as if returning to where all names begin. The water that tastes like salt at dawn. I cupped water in my hands and drank. It tasted faintly of salt. "Why does it taste like tears?" I asked. Lucia touched her chest. "Because the river remembers all sorrow, and so it knows the taste of every weeping." That day, no one spoke. We washed, we rested, we walked the banks with bare feet and eyes lowered. Even the birds were quiet. Sabina's ritual near sunset. Sabina waded into the deepest part of the shallows. She wore a crown of river reed and wild marjoram. In her hands a small clay figure, one she had shaped herself. She set it afloat on a leaf, then sang, not words, but a melody from childhood, one her mother used to hum when the oil lamp flickered low. The figure drifted, spun, then gently sank. Sabina turned and whispered, "Now she knows I still remember her laugh." Tulia's offering. Tulia wrote her mother's name in chalk on a stone, then shattered it against a boulder. The pieces flew into the reeds. "She was never gentle," Tulia said softly, "but I loved her anyway." She did not cry. Instead, she stood in the river until the last ray of sun touched her shoulder, and then she smiled, a quiet, inward smile. The midwife's confession that night, after the fire dimmed, I walked alone to the river's bend. There I spoke aloud my own shame. I couldn't save them all. I tried, but I was too slow. I wanted to live, but I hated myself for surviving. The river made no reply, but a branch drifted past bearing a blossom from a tree long dead. The message was clear. Even from loss, beauty floats forward. The dance of the mist at midnight. Mist rolled in from the east. It moved in ribbons, silver, fluid, light as breath. Some claimed to see figures in the fog. A husband long gone, a brother waving from the edge. One woman walked into the mist and never returned. We did not chase her. She found what she needed, Lucia said, and that was enough. Rebirth in the Wateron. The final morning, we performed the rite of rebirth, each person submerged fully in the river, clothed in white. We emerged soaked, shivering, radiant. The children giggled, the elders wept. No one spoke of the past, only of the day ahead. "We are not who we were," Sabina said. "We are who the river carried us toward." 15. The walk back home. The return journey was slower, not from weariness, but from reverence. We carried no tokens, only silence, only peace, only the scent of river reed and sun-warmed earth. Tullia found a feather in her satchel. "She used to wear these in her hair," she said softly. "Now it's mine." 6. The new shrine back in the village. We built a shrine, not of marble or brick, but of driftwood and stones washed smooth. Inside we placed only water, clear, still, uncovered. So it could evaporate and return to the sky. "What is this shrine for?" the children asked. "For what cannot be said," we told them, "but must still be held." Schöpfer, the dream that was not a dream. A week later, Sabina woke gasping. "She kissed my forehead," she said. "She called me by my secret name. She wept into my arms, laughing and crying at once. It wasn't a dream," she whispered, and I believed her, because in some places, on some nights, the boundary thins and memory becomes touch again. The return of song. For the first time since Pompeii, we sang. Together. Voices overlapping, unjittered, raw but strong. The song had no name, only rhythm, only breath, only life. It rose like steam and settled into the stones. The river inside. Us, we learned something precious by the water, that grief does not vanish, but softens, folds, flows. The river never told us what to do. It only showed us how to move, how to remember without breaking, how to carry loss without drowning. The waters. That remember, sometimes late at night I feel water in my dreams, a current beneath my thoughts, a voice, low and kind, and I. Remember, there is no end to what we hold, no shore to memory, no death to love, only the waters that carry us, until we too are part of the flow. Ashes beneath the laurel, the oracle's warning. The whisper of smoke, the smoke came first. Not the dark, choking kind that once smothered Pompeii, but the thin, silver tendrils of pine resin rising from a ceremonial brazier. It wound through the air like a serpent remembering its path. Sabina saw it in a dream. Again, only this time she woke with a name on her lips. The Sibyl. We had heard the stories, every child did, of the ancient woman who dwelled in the caves beyond Herculaneum, beneath the laurel groves, where prophecy passed from lip to lip like flame through dry brush. She was older than the empire, older even than myth, some said. A voice from the bones of the earth. Sabina turned to me in the half-light. She knows what's to come. And oh, a path among the laurels. It took us 3 days to reach the grove. We travelled eastward, across hills furred with ash-fed greenery. The land, wounded though it was, had begun to heal. New growth surged from blackened soil, bright wildflowers. Against pale stone, vines twisting around charred columns. Tullia carried the offering, a bundle of sacred herbs, dried and tied with red thread. I brought the blood of a lamb, collected in silence, cooled in clay. It was the ancient way. The Sibyl did not answer idle questions, only truths given in trade. We walked in silence beneath a canopy of laurel, the leaves brushing our shoulders like old hands. "Do you believe she's real?" Sabina asked, barely louder than the breeze. "I believe we're being listened to," I replied. The cave of the Sibyl. The mouth of the cave opened like a wound in the hillside, half hidden by draping. Its stone was veined with black and ochre, flecked with old lichen. We entered single file. The air was cool and damp, perfumed with moss and oil. Somewhere deep within, water dripped, slow, measured like a heartbeat. And then we saw her, or perhaps she saw us first. A woman, or something more than woman, seated on a raised stone. Her hair was the color of bone soaked in moonlight, and her Eyes blind yet piercing were milky white. Around her neck hung charms carved of ivory, bronze, and ancient amber. Her skin bore the cracks of time, but she was not frail. She was stillness, wrapped in shadow. 3 have come, she said. Her voice was a reed flute played low. But only one will ask. In before the blood and the thread, we knelt before her. Tullia laid the herb bundle on the stone with reverent hands. I placed the clay bowl at her feet. She dipped 2 fingers into the cooled blood, then smeared it in twin lines across her brow and over her lips. She touched each of our foreheads lightly like moth wings. "Your names are not yours," she murmured. "You were born with others, hidden, lost, but I see the smoke of them still." Sabina shivered. "Why did you call me here?" she asked. "You heard the wind." The Sibyl leaned close. "That was me." Visions in the smoke. She lit the brazier beside her throne. Its smoke billowed thick and fast, curling around us. We breathed it in. The scent was sharp. Laurel, rue, pine, and something else. Something older. We did not sleep. We dreamed while waking. I saw the sky weep fire. I saw children with eyes made of obsidian. I saw a mountain cracking like an egg, its yolk a molten sun. Sabina reached for something, someone invisible, and tears flowed down her cheeks. Tullia clenched her fists until her knuckles bled, and through it all the Sibyl chanted in a language older than Rome, older than time. The 3 truths. When the smoke cleared, the Sibyl turned to us. "I offer 3 truths. You may each hold one." She looked to Tullia. "You will heal those who should have died." Tullia frowned. "How can that be a truth?" "Because it will hurt. Then to me, you will love a child not born of you, and that love will save you." And to Sabina, her voice low, almost mournful, "You will speak the words, and that unmake a city." Sabina's lips parted, but she said nothing. The Sibyl leaned back as if spent. "You may not understand now, but you will." 7. The language of ash outside the cave. The wind had changed. It blew westward toward the ruins of Pompeii, carrying with it the scent of sulfur and stone. "She spoke of a city," Sabina whispered, "but it's already gone." I shook my head. "Some cities live long after their walls fall." "She meant us," Tullia said, "the city inside us." That night we camped beneath the laurels. The leaves whispered secrets above us, their voices caught in ancient wind. I dreamt of my mother, combing my hair beside a fountain that no longer existed, and when I woke, a laurel leaf lay on my chest. Dry, but warm. 8. The mark of the Sibyl. In the days that followed, people began to notice. Not all at once, but slowly. Children saw fire where there was none. Animals fled the hills. The water in the well tasted of copper. A woman said she saw her husband, dead 10 years, standing at the crossroads at twilight, holding a torch that never flickered. Whispers spread. The Sibyl has spoken. The gods stir beneath the earth again. And when we told them of the prophecy, they listened in stillness, because they already knew in their bones. Rebuilding with shadows, we resumed our lives, but everything was changed. We built our village higher on the hill, farther from the sea, not from fear, but from respect. We carved laurel branches above every doorway. We left bowls of salt and ash beside our hearths. Sabina began teaching the children how to read the stars. Tullia became a healer, not of wounds, but of grief. I delivered 3 babies in 1 month, all of them healthy, all of them with wide, wondering eyes. The returning flame one night, weeks later, the sky glowed, not with fire, but with something softer. A northern shimmer, perhaps, green and gold like the reflection of forgotten gods. We stood beneath it in silence. "It's a sign," someone said. "Of what?" another asked. Sabina turned to us, her voice sure. "Of what is coming, and what will be born from it." Hugh. The letters of Dust Sabina began to write. Not in Latin, not in Greek, but in a script she claimed came to her in dreams. Curving lines like waves and branches. When asked what they meant, she smiled. They're for the future. What future? A boy asked. The one that remembers us. Beneath the laurel one last time. We returned to the Sibyl once more. She did not speak this time, only held our hands. Her skin was colder now, her breath shallower. Will she die soon? Tullia whispered. No, I said. She'll pass into the mountain, into the smoke, into memory. The Sibyl pressed something into Sabina's palm, a laurel seed. Then she closed her eyes and vanished. Not in flame, not in smoke, but in silence. The seed that grew in stone, we planted the seed in the ash field, where no life should thrive. Yet, within a week a sprout broke through. Green, alive, hopeful. Children took turns watering it with river water. Adults left offerings, stones, stories, songs. We did not name the tree. It named itself in time. The words that unmake Sabina gathered. Us one evening, she held a scroll, parchment inked with her dream script. The Sibyl said I would speak words that unmake a city, she said, and I think I know what she meant. She read aloud. The words had no meaning to us, yet when she finished, we all wept. Because somehow deep in our marrow, we understood they weren't words of destruction, but release. The city inside us, the pain, the fear, the guilt, it unmade itself and made something new. 15. The silence after prophecy. Since then no one has heard from the Sibyl, but when the wind shifts just right and the trees hold still, you can hear the echo of her chant moving through the laurel leaves. A lullaby made of fire and ash and hope. The waters remember, songs of the drowned, tides that never left. The sea had changed. It no longer danced joyfully against the stone docks of Pompeii, where merchant ships once bustled and nets shimmered with silver fish. Now it sighed, a weary, grieving mother, cradling the bones of her lost children. I had avoided the coast for many moons. Too many memories clung to it like salt to skin. But one morning, as the horizon pulled back its veil of mist and the light struck the hills just so, I felt the pull, not from nostalgia, from something deeper, a voice perhaps, or a song. Returned to the shore, the path down from the rebuilt village wound through wild sage and sea thistles. Grasses hummed with the breeze, and dragonflies hovered like thoughts too delicate to land. The shoreline lay quiet. No laughter, no baskets of fresh catch, only driftwood, sea glass, and ruins half consumed by sand. Sabina walked beside me, her fingers curled around a small, wax-sealed scroll. "Do you believe they're still here?" she asked. "The dead?" "No," she whispered. "The songs." I nodded. "The sea doesn't forget." The offering of bones. We came upon an old fisherman. He stood barefoot in the surf, holding a piece of coral shaped like a woman's hand. He turned it over gently, as if afraid to bruise it. "She reached for something," he murmured, not looking at us. "Or someone." He placed it into a hollow in the rocks and covered it with sand. "The waters give us back what we buried," he said. "Not to return it, but to remind us." We left him there, speaking softly to the tide. The voices beneath. That night we stayed in the remnants of a seaside shrine once dedicated to Venus. Half its columns had fallen, but the altar still stood. Tullia joined us before sundown, bringing cloths scented with myrrh and a candle made from beeswax and old honey. We lit it just after twilight. Its flame barely stirred, though the wind hissed through every crevice. We spoke no words, only listened, and in the silence I heard it, not the sea, not the gulls, but voices, low, layered, lamenting like a choir submerged beneath fathoms of memory. Echoes in the sand. The next morning we found objects along the beach, a sandal, a child's carved dolphin, an amphora cracked, and spilling pearls blackened by time. Each carried a weight, not in mass, but meaning. I held a hairpin shaped like a laurel leaf. I remembered braiding a young mother's hair on the morning before the ash fell. Her name, Claudia, rose in me like a tide. I pressed the pin to my lips. I remember. That was all the dead asked. The ceremonial boat. The elders of our village gathered driftwood and tarred rope. They wove together a raft, no larger than a table, adorned with flowers, olives, and dried herbs. A boat for the unburied, they said. Sabina wrote the names we could recall, those never found. We tied them to bits of clay and cloth. Not all names were full. Some were simply the boy with the green eyes, daughter of Lucius, who danced at festivals, midwife's apprentice, age 9. We sang as we tied them, a song without melody, only breath. The night of letting go, under a sky flooded with stars. We set the raft afloat. It drifted slowly at first, as though reluctant to leave. Sabina placed her scroll atop it. Tullia offered a ribbon from her mother's wedding dress. I placed the laurel pin. The tide caught the raft and carried it outward. As it faded from view, we heard a gull cry, a single aching note that echoed for minutes. We watched until the raft was gone. Then we turned from the sea, but not from the memory. Dreams of drowning that don't frighten. That night, I dreamed of water, but it wasn't dark or frightening. I walked beneath the sea as if it were a meadow. Fish drifted like petals. Statues lay peacefully on the seafloor, moss-kissed and smiling, and the people, the ones lost, walked beside me. They did not speak. They hummed, a melody made from time and tides. When I awoke, tears had traced my cheeks, but I was not weeping, only remembering. The storyteller and the CA boy, no older than 10, approached me as I washed linens in the river. "Is it true," he asked, "that the sea can sing?" "Yes," I said. "And what does it sing about?" I looked up at the sky, the ones it misses. He thought for a moment, then sat beside me. "Then I'll listen every night." He did, and so did others. We called it the Tides Hour, when stories from the deep surfaced and everyone gathered to listen. Songs of the drowned Tullia began writing a song. She said it came to her in her sleep. Each verse was for someone lost. A baker who had just learned to knead with one hand, a gladiator who braided his daughter's hair with thick fingers, a woman who never married, but sent gifts to every newborn child. The song was long, too long to sing in one evening, so she broke it into parts. Each night she sang one, and the waves never once interrupted her. The storm that didn't take a storm rose one night. Fierce, sudden waves battered the coast, wind howled through our village, but no one died, not a single house crumbled. The next morning we found the ceremonial boat, unbroken, resting gently in a cove farther down the coast. The offerings were gone, but the raft remained, as if the sea had taken what it needed and returned the rest. The memory. Keepers, we began carving their names into smooth stones, not graves, not monuments, just memories, set into the cliffside. Children painted them with dyes made from berries and clay. Some adults came to read them aloud every morning so the sea would not forget the voices. We called the place the Listening Wall. Even travelers paused before it. Some cried, some bowed, but none left untouched. The locket and the child one evening, as the tide rolled back, Sabina found a locket. Inside, the miniature painting of a woman and a child. Faded, but unmistakably. Roman, she wore a red sash, midwife colors. The child held a reed flute. Sabina pressed it to her heart. She was one of us, and still is, I whispered. We buried the locket near the tree that had grown from the Sibyl's laurel seed. It felt like the right place. It was the right place. What the waters remember, it said the sea forgets nothing. That every laugh, every cry, every prayer whispered at a shore echoes forever in its depths. Now I believe it, because when I close my eyes and listen, not with ears, but with memory, I can still hear them, the people we lost, their songs, their joy, their footsteps, in the sand, and their love always, their love. Fade into blue, and so we return to the shore, not as mourners, but as keepers, keepers of names, of melodies, of stories sung by the drowned. We let the sea hold them now, not as captives, but as children return to a mother's arms, and we the living sing back softly, faithfully, until we too become part of the tide. Chapter 17. Ash and Amber, the Heirlooms of Silence. In this chapter, Livia begins preserving the personal objects left behind by the people of Pompeii: trinkets, tools, scrolls, amulets, cooking pots, and even children's toys, each imbued with a silent story. With the help of Sabina and local artisans, she establishes a humble sanctuary called the House of Remembrance, where each item is honored with its tale, no matter how small. Visitors leave offerings and contribute objects of their own, weaving their modern lives into the tapestry of memory. Livia reflects on what it means to leave something behind, not in stone, but in kindness, ritual, and care. The tone is deeply contemplative, as the chapter lingers on textures, scents, and the meaning of quiet things passed from hand to hand. It ends with a twilight scene of Livia walking through the House of Remembrance by lamplight, whispering the names of the forgotten into the stillness. When the ash settled, there are silences that descend like veils. After the ash had cooled, after the last column had toppled, there came a stillness in Pompeii that could not be measured in time. It was not the quiet of absence, but of reverence, like the hush before a story is spoken, or the silence in a temple just before prayer. In that stillness, I began to see the things that survived, not grand walls or statues, but objects left behind. Small, ordinary things: a hair comb, a child's wax tablet, a cup with the glaze flaking off, each one a whisper from a vanished life, each one sacred. The first heirloom, the first item I picked up, was a simple oil lamp, still blackened from soot. It had once belonged to my neighbor, old Marcia, who used to light it before dawn so she could knead her bread in peace before the ovens grew hot. I remembered the way she hummed as she worked, her fingers calloused, her eyes always scanning the shadows for her missing cat. I ran my hand over the lamp's surface. "You are still here," I murmured. I did not clean it, I did not change it. I simply placed it on a cloth and watched the light filter through the soot-stained glass. That was when the idea began. The House of Remembrance. We found the building on the outskirts of the village, just beyond the fields of fennel and barley. It had once been a bathhouse, long abandoned, its walls softened by time and moss. The roof sagged, the floor had cracked, but the bones of it were strong. Sabina ran her, hand along the walls, eyes closed. "It remembers," she said, so we began to restore it, not to perfection, but to quiet dignity. No bright marble, no gold, just stone, earth, and linen. It would not be a museum. It would be a sanctuary, for memory, for silence, for the small things that carried the weight of love. Stones with names. We gathered pebbles from the river and painted names on them, one for each object. Some names were full. Gaius, who laughed when he danced. Furia, daughter of the herb woman. Others were fragments, a baker's child, a stranger found near the fountain. If we didn't know the name, we painted a symbol, a sprig of time, a flame, a grain of wheat. Each stone sat beside its object, not as a label, but as a companion. The whisper room, the back room we left untouched. No shelves, no fire, only cushions and silence. It became known as the whisper room. People entered barefoot. They carried small offerings, often things of no material value, a ribbon, a lock of hair, a coin that had passed through many hands. They would sit and speak, not aloud, but in thought. They spoke to the ones who had gone, to the ones yet to come, to the selves they had been before the ash. Sometimes they wept, other times they smiled. No one left unchanged. The amber box. One morning, I found a small wooden box outside the door. Inside it was a piece of amber, warm and golden, with a single black ant frozen within. There was no note, no offering stone, only a child's drawing tucked beside it, crude, shaky but unmistakable, a mother holding a child's hand. I placed it in the center of the main hall, atop a woven cloth. People would pause beside it, touched not by the rarity of the object, but by the stillness it held, as if time itself had been cradled inside it, sir. Cloth of the midwife. One rainy afternoon, a stranger arrived. She carried a bundle wrapped in blue linen. "It belonged to my grandmother," she said. "She delivered children, like you." I unfolded the cloth. Carefully, inside were two things, a wooden stethoscope and a small clay figure of Juno Lucina, the protector of births. "She used to say," the woman whispered, "that when the baby cries, the gods open their ears." We placed it in the east corner, the corner of beginnings. The potter's shelf Tulia, ever thoughtful, began creating a special shelf for broken pottery, not repaired, not mended, just fragments. Each shard placed deliberately, like a mosaic of lives that did not complete. "Not all things are whole," she said, "but all are worthy." Children loved that shelf most. They would trace the lines of cracks with their fingers and whisper invented stories. This one was a bowl that held starlight, a boy once said. I did not correct him. Perhaps it had. Letters never sent. Sabina found scrolls buried in a half-collapsed house. Most were official, tax records, contracts. But one was a letter, to my sister in Neapolis. "If the gods are kind, you will never read this, because the mountain will sleep again. But if you do, know that I tried to sing, even when the sky turned black." The scroll had no signature. We placed it in a niche beside an oil lamp. People often left small poems or fragments of their own there. We called it the shelf of unfinished goodbyes. Night of 100 lamps. On the eve of Volcanalia, we lit 100 oil lamps throughout the sanctuary, each one dedicated to a name we feared forgetting. As twilight descended, the rooms flickered like the inside of a living heart, warm, beating, full of breath and blood. People walked slowly, speaking, in hushed tones. Some sang lullabies, others knelt. Sabina sang the song of the drowned. Tulia scattered rosemary petals along the threshold. I stood in the center and closed my eyes. I heard not voices, but presence. The object spoke, not with words, but with memory. The silence of Touchy began to understand something then. That silence is not empty. It is full of everything we cannot say aloud. The grip of a hand in passing, the way someone folds a blanket, the pause before a tear. All those things. The objects remembered, even when we forgot, even when the ash tried to erase them. They remembered, and so must we. The window with the red cord. One visitor brought only a single thing, a red cord, frayed at the edges. He tied it to the window latch, in the whisper room. "My sister," he said. "She tied one like this every year so I would find her if we were ever separated." He didn't explain more. He didn't need to. The cord stayed there. It fluttered in the wind like a heartbeat. We never moved it. The room of Sentat. Sabina's suggestion, we created a space for fragrance. We burned cedar for soldiers lost, rosemary for mothers, bay leaf for the poets, lavender for the young. People brought perfumes, crushed herbs, flower garlands. The air in that room always changed, sometimes heavy, sometimes light, always sacred. Ash and Amber. The title came from a boy, no more than 12, who sat beside the amber box for a long time. When I asked him what he saw, he said, "It looks like ash and sunlight had a baby." I smiled. "What would you name it?" He thought for a moment, then whispered, "Amber." That night I wrote on the walls, "We are made of ash and amber, burned by loss but lit from within." It became our prayer. The final heirloom years passed. The house of remembrance grew, not in size, but in soul. People came from other towns, other cities. They brought their own objects, their own silences. One morning a man brought a mirror, cracked but still clear. He placed it on a shelf and wrote, "For the things we see only when we look back." That mirror was the final object, not because we closed our doors, but because we had learned. The true heirlooms are not the things we carry, but the stories they awaken. Chapter 18. The breath between heartbeats. A city remembered legacy in motion, the living memory of Pompeii carried forward, and the moments of stillness where grief meets grace. In Chapter 18, Livia travels to Naples for the first time since the eruption, carrying scrolls and relics to share with scholars and survivors. In the bustling port, she is overwhelmed by the noise, the markets, and the reminders of what has been lost. She visits a temple where refugees from Pompeii gather to share stories and sing old songs, each one preserving the memory of their vanished city. Livia finds herself speaking aloud to a group of children, recounting the streets, the smell of bread, the way the bells rang at dusk. Through their eager questions, she realizes that Pompeii is not entirely lost. It lives in voices, dreams, and the breath between heartbeats. She returns home changed, knowing that even as stone crumbles, memory rebuilds. The letter that called. It was a scroll wrapped in linen, bound with a sprig of dried lavender, addressed to no one, yet I knew it was meant for me. To the midwife who keeps the stories of the lost. Come. There are ears waiting to hear. Bring what you carry. The sea is calm. There was no signature, only a place. Naples. And so I prepared. I chose carefully. Not the finest relics, not the rarest stones, but those that breathed quietly, those that remembered hands, laughter, lullabies. Wrap them in cloth, kiss the corners, and place them into a cedar chest. Sabina watched as I tied the rope. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "Only of being heard too late," I replied. Leaving the sanctuary, the house of remembrance watched me go, its wooden doors open like arms held out for a blessing. Tulia brought me a pouch of dried fig and honey. Sabina slipped a ribbon into my hair, murmuring a prayer to Minerva. "For wisdom," she said. As I walked down the path toward the harbour, villagers paused their work, nodding solemnly. No words passed, only the quiet understanding of those who had survived a silence. The sea rode. The boat was small, its sail patched, its hull creaking with age. The captain, an old Etruscan with eyes like dusk, welcomed me aboard without question. We sailed slowly, hugging the coastline. The sky was slate-colored, the sea like hammered tin. I watched the waves and thought of all we had lost, but the water carried something else, whispers, memories, perhaps even forgiveness. At dusk, I fell asleep to the lull of the ocean and dreamed of Pompeii, not in ruin, but alive. Children laughing near the fountain, bread baking, my mother's voice calling me to supper. When I woke, I wept, not from grief, but from the grace of remembering. Naples rising, the city of Naples was louder than I had imagined. Boats crowded the shore, sails snapping like the wings of birds. Streets clattered with wheels and sandals, voices raised in barter, gossip, song. The air smelled of brine, sweat, citrus and ink. Everywhere life surged forward. I stood still for a long moment, overwhelmed, and then I stepped forward. Pompeii had crumbled, but life had not. The gathering house, near the temple of Apollo, nestled between two bakeries, and a fig seller's stall stood a small building painted in pale blue. A hand-painted sign above the door read, Domus Memorare, House of Remembering. Inside were benches, shelves and scrolls stacked like firewood. People sat in quiet circles, passing objects hand to hand. Some wept, some smiled. A woman played a lyre in the corner, plucking soft, wistful notes. A child was drawing a volcano, red, crayon flames licking a sky filled with stars. When I entered, the room hushed. No one asked who I was. They simply made space. I began to speak. I unwrapped the cloth. I laid out a simple comb, a broken lamp, a wax tablet, and then I told their stories. Marcia's lamp, which always glowed before dawn, the child who wrote sun, moon, and Mama on the tablet before the smoke came, the comb that once belonged to a dancer who believed she could braid luck into her hair. My voice did not tremble. It flowed like a river returning to its source. One by one they listened. Children leaned forward, elders closed their eyes, and when I paused, they breathed with me. The children's questions. Did Pompeii smell sweet or sour? A girl asked. Both, I said. Olive oil and figs, and sometimes manure. Was it loud? During festivals, yes. But there were quiet mornings too, when the only sound was bread being broken. What did the sky look like before the ash? I smiled, sometimes blue like your eyes, sometimes gold, sometimes a color that had no name except in song. They nodded solemnly, as if memorizing each answer for later, as if they too were becoming keepers of memory. The song of the old ones. That evening, a group of elders gathered to sing. Not songs of gods or war, but songs of harvest, of making stew, of rocking babies to sleep. One man sang a lullaby that had been passed from his grandmother's grandmother. Sleep now, sweet one beneath Juno's eye, let the stars cradle you, and the winds hush your sigh. Mama will find you in dreams made of dew. When morning returns, I'll be waiting for you. The hall was silent when he finished, and in that silence I heard Pompeii breathe again. A temple of salt and ink. The next day I visited a temple where scribes worked to copy the names of the lost, not just the nobles or magistrates, but the shoemakers, the fruit sellers, the midwives. I found my own name among them. Livia d. Ostia, obstetrics. Who wrote this? I asked. A young scribe looked up. Your patient, Aelia. She said you helped her daughter into the world with a song on your lips. I touched the ink-stained parchment and smiled. I had not known I was remembered. And yet I was. Boom. The stone in the pocket. On my last evening in Naples, a boy approached me in the marketplace. You dropped this, he said, holding out a stone. It was smooth, river-worn, with a faint spiral etched into it. I hadn't dropped it. I had never seen it before, but I took it and nodded. Thank you. Later I realized it was the same shape as the curl in my mother's hair, the same spiral I had once drawn in the ash, the same pattern carved on a wall of a home now buried. Some things find us when we need them most. Return. By moonlight, I boarded the boat at moonrise. The sea shimmered like silk as the sails filled. I looked back at Naples, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. The breath between heartbeats had stretched, and I had found Pompeii there, alive, carried in voices, in stories, in song. I closed my eyes and whispered thanks to the ash that humbled us, to the memory that redeemed us, to the breath that carried us home. Chapter 19. The Last Ember, Guardians of the Hidden Flame. A stranger beneath the cypress. He arrived at dusk, when the sky was painted in the colors of drying herbs, sage and lavender, with a stroke of rust at the horizon. A man of modest robes, ink-stained fingers, and eyes too tired for his years. Sabina was first to greet him. She offered him water and figs. He said only, I've come to find what still burns. Sabina tilted her head. You seek a flame? He looked toward the door of our house. No, he whispered. A woman. Flavius of Herculaneum, his name, was Flavius Marinus, a young scholar from Herculaneum. His city had vanished too, buried like Pompeii, though deeper and darker, drowned in molten earth and silence. He unrolled brittle scrolls on the table, their edges charred, their letters half swallowed by ash. These were pulled from the villa of the papyri, he said reverently, but they are broken. I came not for their words, but for the ones that never made it to ink. I understood. He had come for what lived in breath, not on paper. The library. Beneath the olive tree I led him to the grove behind the sanctuary, where an old olive tree stood with arms outstretched. Beneath its roots, hidden by time and care, we had built a chamber of memory. Its door was wood and bronze. Inside, the walls glowed with beeswax candles, and shelves were carved into the rock. Scrolls, dolls, sandals, herbs, tools, bones, even jars of preserved air, sealed long ago from Pompeii's last day. Each piece carried a name, a place, a breath. It is not a library, I told him. It is a heartbeat. He bowed his head. But to Livia's testament begins, he asked to record my story. Not just your memories, Flavius said, but your way of seeing. So I began. I spoke of my mother's hands as they moved over bellies swollen with life. Of the way she hummed before a birth, of the incense she lit for each child who didn't cry. I spoke of mornings in Pompeii when the bakery opened before the sun, and I would sit by the fountain to wash my hands in its cool song. I told him how we marked time by bells, not calendars, by footsteps, not sundials, and how sometimes grief lived quietly in the corners of rooms. Remembering the ones who didn't leave names, I told Flavius about Decimus, the potter who hummed lullabies to his clay, about Galla, the girl who taught stray cats how to sit and paw for cheese, about old Rufus, who never spoke, but drew faces in soot on every door he passed. They were not magistrates, not poets, but they were the city. Why does no one write of them? He asked. Because they lived gently, I said, and history often listens only to those who shout. Flavius breaks on. The fourth day, as the sun filtered through the cellar cracks like golden threads, Flavius wept. He pressed his hand to a cracked tile bearing a child's footprint. She was mine, he whispered, my sister. He found her name written in faded ink on a birth scroll. I had delivered her. Aelia Marcia, born just before the rains, I recalled. He sank to the floor, clutching the scroll like a prayer. Grief filled the room, not sharp, but soft and endless, and so we sat and breathed. The hidden flame later that night, we lit a single candle and watched it burn. Why a flame? He asked. Because it is the quietest kind of memory, I said. It dances, it offers warmth, but if no one tends it, it dies. Yes, like stories, like cities, like hope. He held out his palm. Then teach me to carry it. The midwife's final gift in the days that followed, we prepared a bundle for him, not gold, not statues, but fragments, a child's sandal, a lullaby inscribed in wax, a vial of oil pressed from the last surviving tree of Pompeii's grove. And one final thing, the spiral stone I had received in Naples, the one that had travelled through time and dream to find me. I placed it in his hand. Carry it, I said. And when you feel alone, remember, it has passed through many hands to reach yours. He nodded, tears catching the candlelight. Guardians of the hidden flame, on the morning of his departure, we stood beside the tree, watching the sun pour, gold over the hills. He bowed low, scrolls bound to his back, the flame within him quiet but alive. You are a guardian now, I told him. Of what? Of the stories no one else will tell. Will I be enough? You already are. 10. After he left, Sabina found me that night kneeling before the hearth. "Do you regret giving the stone away?" she asked. "No," I said, and placed my palm to my chest, "because what it carried is still here." The house was silent, but not empty. Pompeii was still breathing, in the corners of my memory, in the roots of the olive tree, in the steady flicker of the flame. The Ember lives on, and somewhere, on a road north of Naples, a young man walks, with scrolls on his back and a stone in his pocket. He tells stories to anyone who will listen. He speaks not of emperors, but of a city that sang in clay, ash, and love, a city held not in marble, but in the breath between heartbeats. Chapter 20. When the ash turns to light, the sleep of cities, the wake of memory. In the silent hush of what is lost, there is also what is found. The story closes as it began, not in ruin, but in the whisper of life continuing. The ashes. Whisper still it was morning in Pompeii, not the Pompeii of the living, but the still Pompeii, stone, ash, and silence held in amber. And through the crumbled gate of the city walked a woman with sunburnt cheeks, wind-wild hair, and notebooks filled with dreams. Her name was Cassia Vetra, an archaeologist from the new century, born thousands of years too late, or perhaps just in time. She walked slowly through the house of the surgeon, her fingers trailing walls, painted with fragments of joy, dolphins leaping, lovers touching, a goddess mid-birth. In the dust by the threshold, something shimmered faintly. Spiral stone, not large, not grand, just familiar, and the moment she touched it, she heard a voice. Dreams of the living city. That night, Cassia slept in the excavator's barracks beneath a blanket that still smelled of travel, and she dreamed. She dreamed of Pompeii, not as it is, but as it was. The streets full of footfall and fruit carts, song drifting from balconies, women drawing water from the fountain, a child playing with a bone doll near the bakery's hearth, and there, walking beside her in the dream, was a woman in linen robes, older, gentle-eyed, carrying a satchel of herbs. The woman turned to her and smiled. "You found the stone." "Yes," Cassia whispered in the dream, "and you are Livia, the midwife of Pompeii, who once walked these streets with measured grace." She had returned, not as a ghost, not as a figment, but as a memory made flesh, stirred awake by the one who listened. The sleep of cities by day, Cassia worked with trowels and brushes, cataloguing fragments of the everyday, ceramic cups, oil lamps, teeth. But by night, the dreams continued. Livia showed her the market square, the apothecary's garden, the sanctuary where women once chanted for safe births. She taught her how to smell ripeness in figs, how to read a mother's worry before she spoke, how to close the eyes of the newly born who did not breathe. "These things," Livia said gently, "will not be found in scrolls. They are carried in breath." Cassia began to understand. Cities do not die, they sleep, and those who listen closely can still hear them breathe. The house beneath the roots Livia led her, one night in dream, one morning in waking, to a grove near the edge of the ruins. There, a great olive tree grew still, its bark twisted like old hands. Cassia knelt and cleared the leaves. She found a bronze hinge, buried and corroded. The archaeologists laughed when she insisted they dig gently there, but they obeyed. What they uncovered was not a tomb, but a chamber of memory, a cellar carved by hand, stone shelves full of small artifacts, spools of thread, a child's tooth, scroll fragments, dried herbs still fragrant with time. Cassia stood in the doorway, overcome. This was Livia's library, the one the fire forgot. The memory keepers had been real. The ritual of return Cassia began to record everything, not just measurements and photographs, but stories. She sat at the base of the olive tree with a notebook and let Livia's voice Speak through her pen, she wrote, "The last child I delivered had the softest cry, like wind on silk. His mother named him Lucius for the light." She wrote, "Sometimes the ash would cling to us, even before the mountain roared. As if it knew," she wrote, "I am not afraid of death, only of being forgotten. But now I see that even forgetting is not forever." As the days passed, people began to visit Cassia's tent, not for data, but for stories. They sat on the ground, listening to the words of a long-dead midwife who somehow still knew their names. A city in the mind's eye one evening, Cassia spoke at a museum in Naples. She stood before scholars and tourists and children with wide, tired eyes. But she did not speak of dates or layers of volcanic stratum. Instead, she began, "In the last moments before the ash fell, there was a woman holding the hand of a frightened girl. She told her a story, a lullaby about stars being the footsteps of gods, watching over them." And as she spoke, the audience closed their eyes and saw. The midwife sleeps. The night before her return home, Cassia dreamed one last time. She walked the streets of Pompeii at dusk. The torches flickered golden along the walls. Livia waited by the fountain, her eyes soft, her smile tired. "You've done well," she said. "The flame is carried." "Will I dream of you again?" Cassia asked. "Only when you need to remember. But I will sleep now." "Sleep well, Livia." "I will. The city is no longer alone." Cassia woke with tears on her cheek and peace in her chest. The stone lay beside her pillow, warm to the touch. The wake of memory years passed. Cassia became a teacher, a mother, a quiet keeper of lost cities. She told her children bedtime stories, not of dragons or distant stars, but of bread ovens and midwives, of fig sellers and potters who hummed lullabies to their clay. She taught them that ruins are not just broken things, they are invitations to feel, to remember, to listen. The last ember in an exhibition in a museum's quietest wing sits the spiral stone beneath a soft pool of golden light. The plaque reads only, "The Flamekeeper's Stone, found near the house of the midwife, meaning unknown, memory infinite." Visitors linger, not for what it is, but for what it stirs. When the ash turns to light, Pompeii is quiet again, but not silent. You can hear it, if you listen, just beyond the veil of sleep. Footsteps in an old courtyard, a child's laugh, a lullaby. Drifting on ash-sweet wind, the midwife breathes still. She is not gone, only resting. And so we, the living, keep watch. We carry the ember, we whisper the names, we become the city's wake. And so the ash settles. A city sleeps beneath the soil of time, but through memory, through story, it breathes again. If this journey brought stillness to your night or warmth to your spirit, we invite you to stay a little longer with us. Subscribe for more stories woven from history's quiet corners, like if you felt the echo of a heartbeat in the past, and share this tale so that voices once silenced by ash may speak again. Sleep well, dear traveler, until the next story finds you.